that their presentation has a bunch of but what are we going to do? Wow, full house.
Excellent.
We'll make it work.
Okay, sounds good. Do you mind to restart this one?
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Tuesday, May 6, 2025 meeting of the Carrboro Town Council. We will start this meeting as we do pretty much all our meetings with a poetry reading, and I'm just really excited for our guest poet who is sitting over by the door, I think, and I welcome him to the podium now. If you would introduce yourself and your poem. Thank you.
So I'm AW. I currently live with my wife in Chapel Hill. Came here about 2 years ago, and the poem I'm going to read today is titled Brotherly Love. I'm at a new place, so I'm excited for my arrival. But days ahead of my existence, I'm trying to discover my survival. Which way to go, and what people to pursue. What duties do I perform first? What things do I do? What information do I need to know about and I'm supposed to know? But me knowing this special information, does that mean that I grew? Or does it mean that my world and mind that I lived in is skew? Or am I biting off more than I can chew? And the people I have around me are even more few. So I'm exploring all my options, even down to what I eat. I've been contemplating visiting the place for weeks. But honestly, I have been stalking for them for a year, and now my schedule is pretty busy, so I have to make sure it's clear to enjoy the sensation I've been feeling for a year. A bad hurricane storm was approaching the next day to find that school was canceled, so now I have the time. Time to find, time to try, time to make this ride. So I'm now filled with excited emotions I can no longer hide, and I'm now possessed with the brightest and whitest smile so wide, and the amount of coins I'm about to spend will be justified. The city was busy that morning, so I couldn't park curbside. So I had to pay for parking in the lot. That was the downside. Now I started to take my strides. Down the sidewalk, not far up ahead, you could see my pride. The closer I got, the more I knew I would be satisfied. Then the figure approached me, asking a question. I quickly denied. Now I stood in line, looking at my options, trying to decide. Now I finally made a decision, and I waited for my order outside. I then looked up at the building in front of me, looking so dignified. And when I saw that for sale sign in the second floor window, I cried. Thank you.
All right now, AW. Very nice poem. We appreciate you being with us this evening, and also want to recognize our Carrboro Poet Laureate, Miss Liza Wolf Francis. And if she's not doing it, she's bringing somebody else who's bringing the heat. And so we appreciate you so much, both of you. Thank you. Next up, we have quite a few proclamations. I'm going to start with Mayor Pro Tem Danny Now, who will bring us the Bike Month proclamation. Mayor Pro Tem Now. It should be on top, Danny. I like those videos.
Good evening, y'all. I am very pleased to be here this evening to proclaim the following. Whereas National Bike Month is a reminder that biking can be added to many people's transportation routines, especially considering that 28% of all trips are a mile or shorter, and 40% of all trips are 2 miles or shorter, according to the National Household Travel Survey. And whereas transportation is now the leading source of greenhouse gas emissions in North Carolina, and biking is an easy way for people to reduce their carbon footprint and advance the town's climate action goals by reducing miles driven by single occupancy vehicles and relying less on non-renewable resources for transportation. And whereas high-quality bicycle infrastructure can help communities achieve equity goals by expanding the availability of transportation alternatives that are less expensive and more accessible for more people, and whereas National Bike Month is also an opportunity to experience the joys and health benefits of biking, to get outside during the spring season, and to see and experience the community at a different scale and pace. And whereas, in 2010, Carrboro became the first community in North Carolina to be designated a silver-level bicycle-friendly community by the League of American Bicyclists, and numerous town plans include policies that support biking, such as the Carrboro Connects Comprehensive Plan, the updated Bike Plan, and the Safe Routes to School Strategic Action Plan. And whereas, the town will promote biking at several upcoming events: Carrboro Bike to School Day on May 7th, the Carrboro Bike Breakfast on May 13th, the Carrboro Bike on Bus Workshop on May 17th, and several other events organized with local partners, including Shift Chapel Hill Carrboro and the town of Chapel Hill, and cool name, by the way, Shift. And whereas more work is needed at local and regional levels to ensure that more residents are able to participate in planning for infrastructure improvements and have equitable access to bicycle infrastructure so that biking, both on its own or in combination with transit, are reliable options for commuting and for meeting everyday needs. Now, therefore, Barbara M. Fouché, Mayor of the town of Carrboro, North Carolina, does hereby proclaim May 2025 to be Bike Month in the town of Carrboro. Furthermore, she hereby proclaims Wednesday, May 7th to be Bike to School Day, May 12th through May 18th to be Bike to Work Week, and Friday, May 16th to be Bike to Work Day in Carrboro. We encourage residents to add biking to their transportation habits, to become advocates for biking, bicycle infrastructure, and bicycle-friendly laws and policies, and to take delight in every ride. This is the 6th day of May. And if I could, I would love to have Becca Eversole up here to accept this proclamation from our planning department.
Everyone, I just want to say a few quick words. We have a lot of great events for Bike Month, and I just want to boost a couple of things that are going to happen tomorrow morning. Anyone who has elementary, middle school students, we encourage you to bike or walk to work, or use any method to come to work to school other than driving if you can, but especially tomorrow, we will be doing counts of everyone who travels to school, non-motorized. So, like I said, that is Bike and Roll and Walk to School Day, and also next Tuesday, please, we will be at the Libby, and we will be giving out breakfast. So please join us at Carrboro Bike Breakfast, and you can go on the town website and find lots of great events that both we're doing and also the town Chapel Hill are doing, and also our local partners are doing as well. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Becca.
All right, thank you.
Thanks. I forgot I was proclaiming, or I probably would have worn button pants, but oh well.
Hey, hey, hey. So it's my turn. I appreciate Mayor Pro Tem Danny Now for bringing that important proclamation forward. I have 3 other proclamations here. And I would ask, I believe, the folks from Diaper Bank to come and join me at the podium for a proclamation for Period Poverty Awareness Week. Those products we women know are very expensive. I'm just taking a moment to recognize. Whereas approximately half of the population will have a period every month for decades of their lives. Whereas period supplies are a necessary product each month for millions of people across the country. Whereas national surveys and research studies report that 1 in 4 menstruating individuals struggle to secure enough period supplies to meet their needs each month due to a lack of income. Whereas this lack of period supplies, known as period poverty, can adversely affect the health and well-being of menstruators. Whereas national surveys also report that 1 in 5 menstruating individuals miss work or school due to lacking a sufficient amount of period supplies. Whereas period poverty exacerbates the vicious cycle of poverty by forcing menstruators to withdraw from daily life, losing pay, or missing educational opportunities. Whereas menstruators struggling with period poverty risk infections by using proxy products such as socks or toilet paper, or not changing products as often as needed. Whereas the people of Carrboro recognize that period poverty is a public health issue, and addressing period poverty can lead to economic opportunity for Carrboro's people and surrounding communities, and improve health for women and girl menstruators, thus ensuring all people have access to the basic necessities required to thrive and reach their full potential. And whereas Carrboro, North Carolina is proud to be home to trusted community-based organizations, including Period Power, a program of the Diaper Bank of North Carolina that recognize the importance of period products in ensuring health and providing economic stability, and thus distribute period products through various channels. And now, therefore, I, Barbara M. Fouché, do hereby proclaim the week of May 12th through May 18th, 2025 as Period Poverty Awareness Week in Carrboro, and thank the aforementioned period supply banks, their staff, their volunteers, and donors for their service, and encourage the citizens of Carrboro to donate generously to period supply banks, product drives, and those organizations that collect and distribute period products to those struggling with period poverty, so that all of Carrboro's people can thrive and reach their full potential. This is real and necessary for some of us. And so I want to present this to you, Mia, and if you would like to say a few words, thank you so much.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm Maya. I serve at the Diaper Bank as our Period Power Coordinator. So I work with schools to make sure they are sustained with period supplies for those students so they don't have to miss out on class time, social time, their education just because they have a period. And recognizing Period Poverty Awareness Week, we are recognizing that it is a critical issue that a lot of folks in our community suffer from. And because of your support and the partnership that we have throughout the state, especially in Carrboro, we're able to support programs like Porch, if you are familiar with Porch. And we're also able to support all of the schools in Chapel Hill Carrboro City School District and supply them with free period products and emergency clothing so they don't have to miss school. A parent does not have to be pulled from work. So we ask you to join us next week at the Diaper Bank in Hillsborough. We have a few events coming up. We have a line dancing night where you can join us. You grab a box of tampons and your dancing shoes. If you don't know how to do boots on the ground, this is a great chance to learn it. I don't know how to do it, but we will be there. We also have our period prom. So if you missed your prom growing up, this is your chance to don on a red dress or a red suit and join us for uterus-shaped cakes and cookies and Bloody Mary mimosas. Well, I appreciate your time, and thank you guys for recognizing Period Poverty Awareness Week. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wait. When is the date?
Great remarks, Maya, and thank you for being here, you and your colleague. The next proclamation is in honor of and to recognize International Compost Awareness Week. I believe I'm waiting for Jane Danielitz, and there she is. Hello. Whereas International Compost Awareness Week is a public education initiative to showcase compost production and demonstrate compost use. And whereas municipal landfills are the third largest source of human-related methane emissions in the United States, and composting and organic material diversion is a key strategy in reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And whereas North Carolina is only using 30% of the available capacity to process organic material at composting facilities permitted by the Department of Environmental Quality, and has enough remaining capacity to process an additional 1.82 million tons of organic material per year. Whereas the town of Carrboro's 2016 waste audit showed that 53% of waste from single-family homes was compostable, and whereas composting materials such as food scraps, yard trimmings, biosolids, manures, and hay shavings converts these materials into a nutrient-rich soil amendment that communities can use to promote soil fertility and productivity, improve water quality, reduce stormwater runoff and soil erosion, and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And whereas composting creates local green jobs, business opportunities, and infrastructure, and whereas composting reduces greenhouse gas emissions and supports Carrboro's Community Climate Action Plan goal for the town and community to reduce 2010 levels of greenhouse gas emissions by 80% by the year 2030, and is integral to meeting the goals of the Carrboro Connects Comprehensive Plan. And whereas the town of Carrboro joins International Compost Awareness Week theme, Sustainable Communities Begin with Compost, highlighting composting in all kinds of communities at any scale, from the backyard home composter to community composters to large-scale facilities, to all those who recognize the many benefits of using compost on our soils. And now, I feel like I read that speedily. Now, therefore, I, Barbara M. Foushee, Mayor of the town of Carrboro, North Carolina, do hereby proclaim May 4th through the 10th, 2025, to be International Compost Awareness Week, and urge all citizens to commit to composting. This, the 6th day of May, 2025. Thank you, Jane, for being here. I present this to you, and feel free to have a few words.
Thank you. Thank you. Hi, good evening, everybody. Well, I need my glasses. The most important thing about composting is everybody can do it. Everyone eats food, and so you have leftovers, you have scraps, you whatever, you can compost those. So that universality, it's easy, and you can walk or ride your bike, take your compost to the compost bin. So I think it's a good combination. Anyway, raising public awareness, that's what Compost Awareness Week is all about, and we're doing that here in Carrboro. 2 years ago, our neighborhood of Fair Oaks received a Green Neighborhood Grant and started a composting program that included education and community building alongside actually composting. Carrboro composting took off. For the next 2 years, our neighborhood endeavored to enlist surrounding neighborhoods, other neighborhoods, to start composting themselves. So far, 6 more neighborhoods in Carrboro are composting. Our goal is to get Orange County to start a curbside pickup program and join the rest of the country and the world in building greener, stronger, and more sustainable communities through composting. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Here you go, dear. Oh, that's okay.
Thank you.
The last proclamation is a new initiative that we were invited to participate in, and it is called Move with the Mayor. It's the Move with the Mayor Spring Mental Health and Physical Activity Challenge, and it is designed to support efforts to address loneliness and isolation through social connection. Whereas loneliness and social isolation are significant health concerns in the United States, and whereas current research has found that 1/3 of American adults report feeling consistently lonely or isolated, with even higher rates among certain populations such as older adults, young adults, the LGBTQ+ community, veterans, and pregnant and postpartum women. And whereas these feelings of loneliness and isolation can increase the risk of chronic diseases, mental health disorders, and mortality. And whereas over the past few decades, social and technological changes, such as the rise of social media and increased work demands, have impacted our ability to form meaningful connections with others. How many of us can attest to that? The rise of social media and increased work demands have impacted our ability to form meaningful connections with others. Whereas the National Forum for Heart Disease and Stroke Prevention recognizes the critical impact of loneliness and social isolation on the health and well-being of our communities. And whereas the Move with the Mayor Spring Mental Health and Physical Activity Challenge is a powerful initiative to promote physical activity while fostering social connections among our residents, directly addressing the need for stronger social bonds and improved health outcomes. And whereas the town of Carrboro promotes events for both the physical and mental health of community members, and Mayor Barbara Foushee will be directly supporting the following upcoming events. Participating in Bike Month events, including Bike and Roll to School Day on May 7th, that's tomorrow, challenging town employees to have walking meetings and increase daily activities, encouraging children to walk or ride their bikes to school through safe routes to school, and providing motivation for all residents to take care of their mental health, including an opportunity to learn about sound therapy, which helps with self-care at an event on Saturday, May 17th from 11 a.m. to noon at the Carrboro Century Center. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the town of Carrboro officially supports efforts to address loneliness and isolation through social connections, and be it further proclaimed that the town of Carrboro Town Council encourages all residents to actively participate in the Move with the Mayor Spring Challenge, promoting physical activity and forging meaningful social connections to strengthen our collective health and resilience. This is the 6th day of May 2025, and I will accept it on behalf of the town and the town council, and what a great month to start it in, Bike Month. And so that ends the proclamations. Thank you. We're hearing next from Town Manager Tony with her update.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and good evening, council members. I only have one just to quickly mention in the spirit of Bike Month that, well, actually, I just want to thank the Public Works and the Recreation and Parks Department for completing the pump track at MLK Park. It is complete, and hopefully by the end of this month, we'll have an official grand opening, but encourage the community to go ahead and start using it and enjoying the pump track. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Town Manager Tony. We are now down to our public comment period, and we have a full house tonight. And in the interest of fairness, you know, everybody has exactly 3 minutes. We'll let the folks whoever wants to leave. Everyone will have exactly 3 minutes. We do want to hear from everyone. I ask that you be respectful in council chamber, and the only person that we should hear is the person at the microphone, either this dais or that podium. And we will start with, the first person I have is John Reese. And while John, is John here? Yes. Oh, yeah, there he is. And while he's on his way, I know that there's a lot of passion around Bowling Creek and, you know, the possibility of the Bowling 3 and 4, you know, the greenway associated with that. So again, I want to say to please be respectful. And that includes chatter in the audience. If you need to talk to someone, please go outside of council chambers. We need to be able to hear. And, you know, we can hear chatter and other things in the audience. I do not want to clear the chamber, but in the interest of this council being able to conduct business in a respectful fashion, that is on the table. So I thank everyone for understanding. John?
Okay, thank you.
Excuse me, 1 second.
Yes, sir.
Will you tell me to advance your slides? You sent me slides.
I'll just go like that.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, good evening. My name is John Reese. I live very nearby in Chapel Hill, and I spend a lot of my time and my money in Carrboro. I have always led an active life, hiking, cycling, camping. I have instilled this life of activity into my 2 children. Here is a photo of my 2 children, not this photo. Slide 1, please. There we go. Thank you. Here's a photo of my 2 children with a neighbor as we rode bikes on the RTP Trail Network, probably around 1998. We lived in Durham at the time and made use of the trail network to ride and skate. And then here is another photo of them. I'm going to be showing pictures of my kids, sorry. A year or two later, taking a break while rollerblading on the Bowling Creek Trail. And then finally, and I promise you this is the last photo of my kids, another early photo of just the three of us riding bikes again in Durham on RTP Trail Network. I used the two RTP photos in a slide deck I collaborated on to get the RTP tenants to vote and release $10 million to update and maintain the trail network. The dirty little secret on all these excursions back then was that I needed to load my kids, their bikes or skates, and everything else in my car and drive them to these places. Like Carrboro, my neighborhood did not have greenways, and like a lot of Carrboro, it also didn't have any sidewalks. In order to provide my children with safe access to these activities, I was having to drive. Those trips added friction, meaning I regretted we did not ride or skate as much as my kids wanted. I was finally able to move into a neighborhood that had access to great greenways, and I run and bike on them every day. As I ride or run the Morgan Creek Trail on my way to Carrboro, I often see this scene on nice days, a parking lot full of cars, and many cars parking in unauthorized spaces. Like me in the past, many families have no other way but to load up their cars with their kids, their bikes, and make a trip to enjoy something I try not to take for granted. I'm aware that some of these visitors are coming from Carrboro to enjoy the Greenway, since Carrboro still doesn't have one. Morgan Creek Greenway is in a sewer easement, just like proposed Bowling Creek Trail. It has become a great place for kids to safely learn to ride bikes in a safe environment far from cars. On early morning runs, it's common to encounter birders with the characteristic large binoculars and special cameras with large lenses, keenly looking for sightings of extensive population of birds that reside there. I also encounter people with mobility issues, walkers, canes, and other assisted devices. They are getting out and enjoying my nearby greenways. If we did not have them, this activity would be impossible. To close, I leave it to scientists to better explain, but the proposed path along an existing sewer easement, just like the major greenways in Chapel Hill, the counts that show hundreds of thousands of people are enjoying these greenways, and the symphony of birdsong show that the human use is coexisting. Thank you.
All right, thank you, John. Next up, I have Rafael San Juan. Welcome, Rafael.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I am here to speak on behalf of my stepfather, Dave Otto. He was a huge advocate for the Greenway in Carrboro. And, growing up in this town, I've often used that path as well. And it is a very beautiful path indeed, and I believe that paving it would definitely improve the quality of your commute back and forth using that path. There are lots of loose rocks and mud and, different ways that you can hurt yourself. For people who are handicapped or elderly, I would think it would really facilitate their way through it. I would also like to mention, that I know that there's been a lot of resistance in the past. Some people don't want it in their backyards. Others, prefer to leave it as a natural landscape. Some prefer to want to mountain bike using that path. And, I truly believe that making that pathway paved won't interfere in any of that. I don't believe that it is going to bring any crime or drug usage or anything. I've used the other pathway just lower down the street, and I've never really seen anything shady happening. I don't believe that that is true. I think that was just an argument and maybe something of the past. Chapel Hill Carrboro is an ever-changing community. We have a lot of good folks around and a lot of people that, would be able to take care and report something happening there. So I do believe that improving the area would just be positive and not a negative thing. And, it was his dying wish to see this come through. I would really also love to fulfill that wish for him. He had two daughters that were severely handicapped, and they could not enjoy that pathway as much as other children could. And unfortunately, he didn't live to see this result, but I truly believe that we're headed the right direction, and that we're going to make this happen for everybody. Hopefully, we can also, maybe make it an honor to him and maybe slide his name on there somewhere, like the Dave Auto Pathway. I would love to see that. I know my time is running out, but I just wanted to thank you guys for the opportunity, and wanted to let you guys know that, he's out there looking at us, and he is really hoping for the best for this to happen. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next, I have Apollonia Maria Otto. Welcome.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Apollonia Otto, and I am widow of Dave Otto, and I live at Pathway Drive. And I really like to walk on greenways, but I have glaucoma, I have a vision problem, and for me it's very, very difficult. And I want that to be paved, and it's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comments, Mrs. Otto. Thank you. Next, I have Mr. Bob Proctor. Welcome, Mr. Proctor.
Hi, I'm Bob Proctor. I've commuted daily by bike for 50 years. Next year will be too soon to spend over $1 million designing bowl and paving. We are still early in the e-bike adoption process, and the 1980s Libby-Cotton bike path is becoming less safe as it becomes outdated. Dog walkers and baby carriages ignore the pedestrian lane as they walk at 3 miles per hour. Human bikes go 10 to 15 miles per hour, and e-bikes zip by at 20 to 25 miles per hour. The Netherlands has begun to revamp its bike-hard infrastructure for e-bikes. Last month, Chapel Hill invited input on its consultants' proposals for revamping Cameron bike lanes. At their meeting, I was dismayed to learn that those experts from Charlotte had not given weight to increasing e-bike traffic, nor to the disparities in speeds. How safe would I-40 be if cars were allowed to go 20 or 40 or 70 on it? The world needs years of experience to figure out how to design around e-bikes. And no one knows now what the design for Carolina North will look like. Better routing for a north-south connector is already available, and the concrete plant has just closed. So once UNC finishes switching from coal to gas, the railroad tracks will become available. So as governments at all levels face impending budget crises, we can't afford to pay over $1 million on a plan that will become outdated as soon as tons of concrete are being poured next to the creek. As a progressive, I've been sad to witness the DOGE cuts. But as a mathematician, I've long been a federal debt and deficit hawk, especially given our lousy age demographic curve. Even if we Dems take back the federal government and cancel the Trump tax cuts, we will all still be in super deep doo-doo. Most of our huge federal debt has been financed at 2% or 3%, and those interest rates could easily double quickly back to historic norms. So not only is it likely that the funds for paving bowling won't be found, it is also the case that the town should prepare to make up for the loss of federal and state funds, which we are still using for higher priorities. As medical costs continue to increase for an aging population, both federal and state budgets will become overburdened.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Proctor.
you.
I appreciate it. Next up, we have Miss Elizabeth Young. Elizabeth? And right after Elizabeth is Bruce Sinclair. Mr. Sinclair.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and I am a little early because I know I'll be back in a couple of weeks, but I just want to talk a little bit about the LHA, Long-Term Homeowners Assistance, because this is a county program that helps people who need property tax assistance. Now, there's some state programs, and they all start, you have to make as low as like $39,000. So, so there's not much in between, and this is just any age can do this, and we've seen it help a lot of people in the county. And in Chapel Hill, I know that a neighbor of mine got $500 from this and then got a match from Chapel Hill. But right now, especially, and we do have, I volunteer a lot at Rogers Road in Carrboro. There is some, county Carrboro and Chapel Hill property out there. And right now, so I'm going to jump around a little bit because I wasn't ready to speak here. But we're coming into the 5th year with the LHA, with the county, and into the 3rd year with Chapel Hill. So I've been kind of gently talking to Carrboro for a while, and I think really I would love to see Carrboro participate and fund like $50,000 for a match. So right now we're in some devastating territory with these tax valuations. I've been working with the, there's a Orange County Property Tax Justice Coalition. It's been going on for about 2 weeks, and there's a lot of data and appeals and people. I have personally seen some people who've had their property taxes increased by 126%. So that's way different from when I was working in 21, and it had gone up 33% and 66%. So especially in the whole county, it's been, in its history, it's been the biggest overall increase, 50%. Now, in the flyers that we have, Rogers Road has gone up 125%. So it's on the back of the African American homeowners because their property values are all often overvalued, and as we all know, so for different reasons. But so I really would hope that y'all would go ahead, and maybe you want to gradually go up and then put it on line item, but let's start out with 50 if you can. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Ms. Young. Great information there. Yes, Mr. Sinclair, welcome.
My name is Bruce Sinclair. I've lived at Pathway Drive for 30 years, right? We actually have an easement on our property to get down to the creek to enjoy the creek. And I'm here to speak in favor of funding, budgeting for the next phase of development of the Bowling Creek project. Funding demonstrates commitments to our long-held town goals, repeatedly reiterated in town visioning and planning documents over the last 20 years, starting with Vision 2020 and Carrboro Connects, of healthy living, access to schools, decreasing auto reliance, among other goals. By budgeting, we increase the chances of successful funding in the next round by having a well-defined and thought-out plan demonstrating our commitment to the project. As an engineer, my experience is that the design phase will allow any environmental concerns to be addressed earlier in the project, perhaps decreasing the long-term cost further down the road and only improving the final project. In other words, if we know what we're doing and we have demonstrated our commitment, I think the probability of getting additional funding would definitely increase a lot more. And I think that's really all I had to say today. And I hope you approve the budgeting coming up in June. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Sinclair. Next up, I have Margaret Weiner. Margaret? Welcome, Margaret.
Good evening. I speak tonight as a taxpayer, a senior citizen, and a member of the Board of Directors of the Friends of Bowling Creek about the 2025-26 budget and the proposal to spend $1.4 million on a design to build a paved bikeway along Bowling Creek. Let me begin by raising alarms about spending this kind of money for what is only a design at a time of incredible economic uncertainty. Orange County tax evaluations based on current market values of homes mean that homeowners may face significantly higher taxes, as we've just heard. Add to that OWASA's proposed hikes in water bills, and add to that the likely astronomical inflation we all will face in the wake of tariffs, along with cuts to federal funding that affect everyday life and welfare, including housing and human services. This is a time to hunker down and be conservative in spending. It is not the time to plan large infrastructure projects. Rather than such investments, I would hope the town would address its deficit and prioritize staff salaries and benefits. It is all the more problematic to consider spending such funds on merely a design, never mind the cost of actually building it, since we all know that projects always cost more than expected, given that Triangle West decided not to fund it in 2026, and given that the engineering study that was done identified a host of difficulties, especially when there are much cheaper routes that would be more direct and more efficiently link current and planned bikeways. Last but never least, given the threats to the natural world the federal government currently poses, surely we should avoid contributing to those threats. There are numerous ecological concerns to proceeding that are worth noting. Among them, I'll just mention a couple. Stormwater impacts. We're going to be hearing about that shortly. That the engineering report likely underestimated, since the report was not focused on the greater dangers of flooding with intensified rain due to climate change, and which impervious surfaces increase. Taxpayers would shoulder the cost of repairing damage caused by the way such surfaces amplify floods. Loss of carbon sequestering and tree canopy during both construction and maintenance, and as well as a threat to biodiversity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Margaret. I do believe Mr. Crook, did you want to speak? I know you didn't get to sign up. Come on up. And I see you as well, Linda and Diane and Brian. Linda, Diane, and Brian.
I believe we have Heidi down front.
Oh, Heidi.
Hi, my name's Rob Crook. I'm a citizen of Carrboro here, off and on since the early 90s. I work a lot in the water sector and natural resource management. I would like to basically advocate for not funding this engineering study. For me, engineering studies are a way to waste money because you don't know what you want to do yet. It does not make any sense in this economic period to go ahead with this. So the financials are bad, and the ecological consequences of going forward with the greenway along Bowling Creek is also negative. Right now, you've got the greenways in Chapel Hill. They've been there for over 30 years, okay? Those streams, Bowling Creek is listed a 303D stream, all right? And Bowling Creek is listed as 303D impaired below Pathway Drive, and it's been that way for a long time. You know, I have not seen the greenway in Chapel Hill improve water quality. As a matter of fact, what I do see Chapel Hill doing is trying to install riprap along Olmsted Drive so that they can try to control some of the erosion that's occurring in that area where they just built that greenway. It's just not a good plan, and there's so many alternatives. And those alternatives are actually spelled out in the Jordan Lake rules. So you may spend this $1.4 million, and the state could come in and say, we're not even going to approve, we're not going to permit this in a few years, okay? I mean, it makes no sense to spend town money on this when we're already looking at a $4 or $5 million shortfall in your budget this year. It just doesn't make sense to spend this money right now. And there are alternative routes that exist along Sewell. It's a shorter path to go from those neighborhoods where I live in Spring Valley and Pathway. It's shorter to go along Pathway up to Cobblestone and across the bridge and then into the high school area than it is to go along the creek. That's already done. And those are residential. Those kids are already riding their bikes along that stretch of road. That's not an unsafe road. Additionally, if we were to try to build an additional greenway, you've got the school road that is actually suitable for an expansion and construction of a greenway. So I would really strongly encourage you to do the correct ecological thing and the correct economic thing for this town and actually say, no, we're not going to do this right now. It just doesn't make any sense from a financial or an environmental perspective. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Thank you. Thank you. Next up, I'm going to call up Linda. Linda Hawk, come on up.
Hi.
Hello.
Well, can everybody hear me? First, I want to thank Catherine Frey, who actually invited me to come and reminded me that this was happening. I also wanted to say I've been here for 50 years, so I've seen all kinds of things happen. I want to, first of all, commend our new manager, who I have seen in action and complimented her then. She's amazing. She's come up with a good budget. And she's been here a year, and I think it's important that we go ahead and approve it. I do want to say, lots of people have said a lot of things, just a couple of quick things. Your main duty as elected officials is fiscal responsibility. You are facing incredibly uncertain times. They're volatile. You don't know what's going on at the federal level. You don't know what's really going on at the state level. One of my biggest concerns is we're losing a whole generation of 40-year-olds who are white-collar professionals that are losing their jobs, that we depend on, that live here, pay taxes. You have earlier obligations that you're required to meet. And in addition, as taxpayers, and this goes to our services and everything else, there is the county tax reevaluation and how that's going to go up. There's the AWASA, 5% this year, 7% next year. We don't know about the school special tax. It has not been, we have the highest taxes of any town in North Carolina. I don't think it has been made clear to the public that if you add a project that is basically voluntary, and you carry the entire burden, and I wasn't going to talk about it, but since people have been talking about the 1.4 million, I understand it may almost double the amount you might need to raise in terms of the cent tax on per 100, and people need to be aware of that. We should be prudent. We have been hiring staff. We've got an incredible staff now. We had really bad vacancies. I just support your manager and the professionals that work for you, because bookkeeping is all about being accountable, and you will be held accountable because people will know what happened here. And it's not a time for a controversial idea or a new project or anything that introduces more uncertainty. And that's my plea to you. There's no reason you can't take a pause wherever you fall out on that project that people have different opinions on. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Linda. Thank you. Diane Robertson, come on up, then Brian Crawford, and then Heidi. Is there anyone else?
As I come up here, I thought that this was a budget hearing. We would talk about this in the budget, so I wasn't prepared that it would be at this point, which is why I was a few minutes late. I've lived here for about 32 years in the same house that I'm in now. What does a moral budget look like in these times? I am paying attention to the national budget driven by values that are misaligned with many of my own. I am also looking at my town budget, which I expect to be more closely in sync with those that recognize the current climate crisis and issues of equity that were adopted by the town council. One of the values that hits both of these is to have a livable planet. I learned that this Thursday, WNC is hosting a discussion called Scorched Workers, How Rising Heat Impacts Outdoor Workers in North Carolina. Clearly a topic that is related to how well we manage development and support heat mitigating practices. This morning, within 2 minutes of being outside, my Merlin app detected over 21 different bird calls. I saw my first hummingbird at the feeder. I was visited by 3 varieties of woodpeckers, and a bluebird couple was feeding their baby that's just about ready to leave the nest. This is because I live at the edge of Bowlin Forest, the home of Bowlin Creek. The part I live in is in the floodplain. Bowlin Forest supports the lungs of this community, which is like the Amazon jungle, which is what the Amazon jungle is for the planet. Every acre and species we destroy or undermine flies in the face of creating the healthy, livable, and climate-resilient community Carrboro claims to favor. Even though support of science is being challenged by our current federal administration, I think most of us that live in this community still give science a thumbs up. That the council would appropriate $1.4 million of taxpayer money for a study or design to destroy the urban forest, the delicate ecosystem that supports the wider community, is environmentally and fiscally irresponsible. You don't remove trees that capture carbon, provide biodiversity, a critical component to the fight to mitigate the climate crisis, and increase stormwater runoff by hardening the absorptive surface that is identified in the floodplain. You don't have to spend a penny to know this. These are well-documented facts that have been shared with the town since 2009, when this project was first being considered by your predecessors. Identifying this as a priority does not stand the test of addressing the climate crisis or the equity issues that affect the human community. And what about our concern and commitment to affordable housing? This issue gets political voice for votes at election time, but no serious or fiscally responsible solutions are presented. If we are serious, we would use this money to address that and not on a study that science tells us is wrong. The recent tax reevaluation furthers our ability to maintain affordable housing. I ask that you not include this project in your budget.
Thank you, Ms. Robertson. Thank you for your comments. Appreciate everybody's comments. It's helpful. Mr. Brian Crawford, he's already up. Come on up. And then Heidi. I don't see anyone else.
Good evening. Just before I start, I want to say that I appreciate changing the time to 6 o'clock. This allows me, with 2 young kids, to actually be here, and I'm going to be able to get back home and put my 2-year-old to bed. So I really do appreciate that. So I am here to speak in favor. I don't have prepared marks, but I am 100%, as is the majority of our community, to fund the Bowlin Creek Greenway. We are at least 10 years overdue to complete this project. We should have done this 10 years ago, and it would have saved us millions of dollars, but we should still do this today. Because a lot of people come up here and they like to talk about climate, and they like to talk about safety. Guess what? This project will enable us to reduce and eliminate many thousands of car trips. It will enable us and our children alternative paths to get to school fully removed from cars. We should have had this, and the children 10 years ago should have had this. The time is overdue. I am frustrated that I have to be here yet again to talk about something that the community has made abundantly clear that we need to do. I am frustrated that the people who we probably are politically aligned will still come up here and use the same tactics that our Republican people, this fascist regime, will use. And I've had enough. And I appreciate your time. I appreciate everyone here today to do civics, to practice civics today. And I encourage you to not only fund this, but act with a sense of urgency so that my kids and myself can get into Carrboro from the north of Carrboro, fully removed from cars.
Thanks so much, Brian. Thank you so much. Heidi? Heidi, come on up. Welcome.
Thanks.
Hold on, Heidi. Let's be respectful. Let's be respectful of folks that are at the microphone. Thank you. Heidi?
Happy Bike Month. I'm up here for a couple of reasons. And since people are giving their time in Carrboro, I think I've been here 50 years, so for whatever that's worth. I wanted to make sure everybody knew, I think most of you have heard, but the Carrboro Bicycle Coalition has merged with the Bicycle Alliance of Chapel Hill to form a new advocacy group called SHIFT, which is working to do a lot of the same advocacy we've done and to get people to shift their modes of transportation. And for Bike Month, I know that several things were already named by Becca, but I also wanted to name a couple of things that weren't on that list that Carrboro Bike Coalition Shift has started to do. The second Friday of every month, we have Cycle In for Coffee at Open Eye. It's from around 7:30. It'll probably change to 8 pretty soon, to 9 or 9:30. Just come have a cup of coffee, sit around with other people who like to talk about bike stuff. And also there is a Kittical Mass Ride on Sunday, Mother's Day, doing the Pumpkin Loop, and they're meeting in the parking lot up by the Pumpkin Loop at 9:30. And then I think the rest of them were covered by Becca for the next week or so. I also wanted to talk about, hang on, asking the town to, I heard there were a couple of delays on some of the road safety projects, and I'm a little concerned about that, especially 54. I feel like that's been dragging on for a long time. I know that the sidewalk to South Greensboro Street has had a lot of setbacks. I don't know if any funding from grants might help these things along, but I just feel like all of them, the greenway that goes from Morris Grove to Lake Hogan, I mean, those kids are in college now that started out in Lake Hogan. They've never been able to take the greenway to the school. So I would really prioritize those things. I would also like to thank you for putting money in the budget for the Bowling Creek Greenway. I will note that we spent $40 million plus on our library, and at least half of that was for an enormous parking deck that encourages parking, driving, especially as it's being subsidized by the town because we aren't charging for the parking. And if we don't have enough money to spend $1 million on something that encourages other forms of transportation, I don't know what that says about us. Also, I lobbied in Raleigh today, and I just want to thank you all for continuing to show up every day in this really, really tough environment to push for our rights. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Heidi. Anybody else for public comment? Come on up. What's your name?
I'm Sue Ann.
Hi, Sue Ann. Welcome.
Hi, everybody. Gosh, I have stage fright. I don't suppose anybody else did. I live on Umstead Drive, right along the Greenway, which at first, when it was starting to be built, I called it the Green Away, because they had to take down a lot of trees. And in the years that they were building that, I was witness to the felling and chipping of trees and heavy machinery, which was really kind of awful. They really have destroyed the riparian zone. The banks have been severely scrubbed. It's great that people have a paved place for riding and walking. I think that's wonderful, but if we have a greenway right alongside the riparian area, right alongside the creek, I have seen the devastating effects of that. I've lived here for 50 years, like I'm joining the 50-year club. I've lived in the house on Umstead Drive for 23 years. I have never witnessed the kind of flooding that we've had in the last several years. Our road, Umstead Drive, has been closed numerous times. The stormwater runoff just, comes and the creek just floods. One year, our Umstead Drive flooded up to the bottom of our mailbox. So I think we really need to think very carefully about, well, first of all, if we want to fund this and where we want to have this. I think it's really important to preserve the riparian area and preserve what tree canopy we have. And yeah, that's what I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sue Ann. Anyone else? Come on up. If you would introduce yourself, please.
Hi.
Thank you.
I'm Kate Wetton. I live in Fair Oaks on Pathway Drive. Been in the area 30 years, 32, 30-something, 35 years. And really enjoy Bowling Creek. It's an amazing resource that we have in our area. One of the things that's confused me in the years that we've been talking about this is we have a lot of bikers back there and kids who are bikers. And mountain bikes is just a different form of biking that's really fun, and it's nice to be able to have a place where one can mountain bike, and there are other places that we have where one can be on their bikes and that are different. They do feel different. It does change the environment to have a paved, particularly cement pathway. So, and we have wonderful alternatives, as was described earlier. So, and additionally, I want to, as someone working in our universities in this area are our factories, there are coal mines, there are places that feed the livelihood of others right now. And we're going to have a lot of salary cuts, layoffs. People are just starting to feel that, just starting to figure out what they're going to be doing next year. It's going to be a really shaky couple of years, and we've got a lot of creativity, and hopefully we can revive and we can bring it all back together, but these years are going to be hard, and we're only going to start seeing the real effects starting maybe August, September, going into the next year. So, and there are things that we really need to do that are causing dangers to people in the community that need to be repaired, as was talked about also. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kate. Anyone else? Anyone else? So we really appreciate all of the public comment. The town manager will present her recommended budget tonight. Certainly there are other parts before we actually approve the budget, such as a couple of public hearings, I think, maybe even another work session for the council. So this is somewhat the beginning of that process, and continue to be engaged and continue to weigh in. Thank you. For those that are leaving, I'll just wait a few minutes if some of you want to leave. Others of you. Okay. Thank you so much. Councilmember Posada's getting water, so we'll wait until he returns. Thank you. Thank you. He's coming now. So we are down to the consent agenda. The consent agenda is a part of normal town business. We have 3 items. Council members, if there is not an item that council members need pulled, I will entertain a motion to approve all of these in one single motion.
So moved.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Haven O'Donnell, seconded by Councilmember Posada to move these 3 items on the consent agenda. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. That is the consent agenda. Town Manager Tony, first item on the general agenda.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The first item on the general agenda is a presentation from Seth Palmer. He's the North Carolina League of Municipality Director of Urban Affairs, as well as the Mayor's Metro Coalition, and he's going to give an update from the league.
Welcome, Seth, in person and not in the Hollywood squares.
Good evening, and thank you, Mayor and council members. As the town manager stated, my name is Seth Palmer, and I'm the Director of Urban Affairs with the North Carolina League of Municipalities, and I also serve as a staff liaison to the North Carolina Metropolitan Mayors Coalition, a constituency group of the league representing mayors of metropolitan municipalities, a group that includes your own mayor, Mayor Barbara Fruchie. As likely as a refresher for many of you, the North Carolina League of Municipalities is a member-driven association representing the interest of over 540 cities and towns across the state. The league provides a multitude of services, including insurance, research and communications, training, professional development, legal advice, and accounting advice. But put simply, the league is a one-stop shop for all things municipal government. While there are a ton of my other colleagues who can speak on all these services and certainly would welcome the invitation for any of them to come and speak to you about those, the one thing I didn't roll through in this list, but is part of my role with the league and core to my presence here, is our advocacy and lobbying work. The league's government affairs team represents cities and towns before the North Carolina General Assembly, the United States Congress, and regulatory licensing boards and rulemaking authorities. This representation takes up all kinds of forms. We could spend a lot of time talking about all the various things that go on in these various forums, but what we will talk about a little bit tonight, and I certainly could stand up here and talk a lot about what's going on at the federal level, as that's part of my significant portfolio for the league and all of the challenges that are being faced by municipalities related to what's going on at the federal level, from funding to programmatic changes and programmatic cuts, many of which I'm sure you'll hear about during your budget conversations as they persist and pervade down into that level. But we'll talk a little bit about what's going on at the North Carolina General Assembly. But before I do that, I certainly would like to frame how the league puts together our broad-based legislative goals that you may be aware of. During the year prior to the biennium starting, so that would have in this past year been the 2024 year, the league conducts a broad-based stakeholder outreach and engagement effort. We go around, we do outreach and engagement meetings across cities and towns throughout North Carolina. And during 2024, that led to more than 197 city officials from 154 cities and towns participating in the overall process, and ultimately led to the adoption of 5 legislative goal buckets. And those include infrastructure, healthy finances, uplifting underserved communities, vibrant communities and neighborhoods, and adaptive municipal operations. All of these have individual subordinate goals that fall under each of them, and they allow the league and its government affairs team to engage with legislators both in a proactive and a reactive setting as situations warrant. Many times we have the opportunity to engage with legislators before bills are filed, but also at the same time to react to bills after they've been filed, many times without necessarily the knowledge or interaction with the league prior to them being filed. Since the General Assembly convened in January, they have filed almost 1,750 bills. While that is what could seem like a large number of bills, when you really think about it over a legislative session, that's about on par with what they've done over the past number of cycles. And of that, the league is following and actively monitoring about 300 to 350. And those bills range from local bills which affect specific and unique municipalities and counties, but also large, broad-based statewide public bills that affect each and every municipal government in the state of North Carolina. One thing that I will note, and this is only pertinent given the time that I'm speaking to you, is that right now the General Assembly has entered into a situation where they are moving bills forward to what's known as the legislative crossover deadline. For for general structural standpoint, that is a created entity or created opportunity for the General Assembly to move pieces of legislation between chambers and to gain access for those bills to remain viable for the remainder of the session. And so you have probably seen throughout media reports and through any of your interactions, a lot of bills are moving right now. That just happens to be because they have to get them out of the chamber that they were filed in order to be heard in the future. The only exceptions to that rule are bills that appropriate money, that affect elections or annexations, or that make appointments to various boards and commissions, as well as the ability to put forth constitutional amendments. So I'm going to caveat any of the bills that I'm going to talk about by saying that over the next 48 or so hours, their situations could change. All kinds of policy could change. And I only do this about once every year when I say I'm not really necessarily confident as to where certain bills stand. But as we talked about, we go through a process by which the league overlooks all the potential issues that could come before us and each of y'all as municipal leaders. And we go through and monitor each of the bills that are moving, and every Friday provide updates to each of you as league members through the legislative bulletin. We also have other opportunities throughout the year, many of which we hope to never deploy, things like webinars and specific advocacy outreach on particular bills. However, as we'll speak to in just a second, there has been a couple of situations so far this session. I will talk just about a couple quick things. First and foremost, I will start with a variety of bills, and we'll only touch on one, that have focused on responding to the the broader national conversation related to removing diversity, equity, inclusion programs across government. This has been something we've been monitoring both at the state and federal level, and one such bill that I've certainly presented on many times is House Bill 171, which would prohibit local governments from using state funds or public monies to quote unquote promote and support or implement and maintain DEI programs. And this bill comes with penalty provisions that include up to $10,000 of individual occurrence liability. And that's a significant concern to the league, and one that we've continued to engage with legislators on. And this has become an unfortunate theme that we've seen over many bills that are imposing penalties on you as municipal leaders. And as the league, we continue to advocate on your behalf to show the power and the impact that that would have on both your ability to serve, but also on the liability and potential financial ramifications of imposing such liability on municipal governments in the situations where they could be civil actions filed against them. This bill did pass the House last Wednesday along partisan lines and will move on to the Senate, where it does actually face potentially an uncertain future. Many of the DEI bills that have been moving have come with support in one chamber, but not necessarily support in the other chamber. That has a lot of different situational issues and concerns that come with it, but certainly are things that we continue to monitor. I'm going to shift to two other bills that actually were discussed in committee just a few hours ago. And I was actually down in the General Assembly today to hear both of them. First would be Senate Bill 587. And this actually addresses an issue that began in December, which is the downzoning issue that I'm sure all of y'all are tired of hearing about, frankly. And we are tired of, in many respects, talking about it because it was an issue that was brought up in a very last-minute situation. It was introduced in one of the last Helene recovery bills of the 2023 session. And it created secondary standards for things like downzoning and non-conforming property uses that did not necessarily align with ordinances that we've seen across the state. And it placed municipalities in very complicated positions, specifically related to many of their ongoing efforts to rewrite and restructure their UDOs and other ordinance structures to allow for development. This placed a hindrance on them. And so we've been working over the past few months with leadership in both the House and the Senate to come up with a solution that would address some of the concerns that have been levied on this issue that were related to specific situations, but also to address this going forward and set forth standards. And Senate Bill 587 does that, and it received a favorable committee report earlier today and will be heard by the full Senate hopefully as early as tomorrow. And then I will conclude my overview of bills with House Bill 765, which was discussed by the Housing and Development Committee of the House earlier today. This is unfortunately a sweeping and unnecessary approach that would upend decades of land use law. This bill would ultimately undermine local decision-making and limit the municipal powers to set development standards tailored to the unique local priorities that are outlined by many of your constituents, and many of whom have spoken earlier today. This bill, by some, has been promoted as a broad-based approach to addressing the state's housing crisis, but as we know through history and through engagement on this issue for many years, there's no single solution that will fix the housing challenges that we face, and that each community are dealing with them in many different ways. And ultimately, by doing the changes that we've seen in 765, it will potentially de-incentivize many local councils from engaging on many of these issues, as they would be removed from some portions of the process. The League has remained a vocal opponent of this bill while also presenting alternative solutions which would provide communities with additional tools to support the building of more housing which is affordable for persons across all income levels and implement long-term opportunities for our state. This bill did pass out of the House Housing and Development Committee by a voice vote, which was a bit divided in its presentation. And it has continued to face bipartisan opposition, actually, including some conversations that have been going on while I've been sitting in this room, which present a potentially uncertain future for it as well, which ultimately is certainly something we would advocate for, as we know the potential impacts. I could certainly stand up here all night and talk about different bills of the 300 that have various and challenging impacts or even potentially positive impacts to this council and to the town, but I'll leave you with one key message. For more than 100 years, the League has valued the partnership that we have with the state's municipalities. Though we may have many diverse needs and challenges, when municipalities all work as one, we are able to advance every municipality in the state. Mayor and Council, I thank you again for the opportunity, and I certainly will answer any questions that you may have. The town manager certainly has my contact information as well as contact information for my colleagues at the League, and certainly we always welcome the interaction with council members at any time. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Palmer. I think I see Councilmember Posada first.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for the presentation, for your talk this afternoon. On H 765, am I correct that it now moves to J2 and then rules, or was it removed from J2 altogether?
It has had its serial referral to the Judiciary Number 2 Committee removed.
Okay.
It does currently have a potential that it could be re-referred to the Finance Committee, as there is a fee included in it. However, there has not been a ruling by the Rules Chair of the House as to its future possibility. It currently, as of right now, exists in the Rules Committee.
But it potentially will have to go through at least one more committee before it goes before rules. But it could just jump into rules tomorrow when they meet.
Certainly. Procedurally, it could just move through the Rules Committee. However, it could also be re-referred to other committees.
Good deal. And then you spoke about bipartisan opposition to that bill. I'm wondering, and this also is speculative in nature, but crossover is Thursday. We're looking at things kind of like being fast-tracked. Is there appetite in the Senate for this?
That continues to be an open question that we have been engaging with Senate members on. There are certainly components of the bill that senators across the aisle and across the chamber have interest in, addressing things like the opportunities for accessory dwelling units and others, many of which we've been working on in separate bills, as many municipalities across the state already have ordinances which support the building of accessory dwelling units and other quote-unquote alternative styles of housing. And we've been engaging with those legislators on that. I couldn't stand here today and tell you if it would, in its current form or in any future form, move within the Senate.
That's my reading on it. And then last question is on 306, House 306. Do you have any updates on that one?
I will apologize and say that I'm not currently listing that bill on my list.
That's
but
totally fine. I know
will-
that it was pulled
apologize.
from consideration on the floor last week. We were supposed to be hearing it. There's an amendment going on, and this is one that has to do with kind of land use and affordable housing altogether. I know that it was supposed to be heard on the floor last Thursday, and then the chair removed it for some additional conversations today. I know that was something that you were looking at.
Yes, sir, and I apologize. I'm actually pulling it up to remind myself. I've heard this bill has received a lot of questions. It applies specifically to employees in certain distinct areas. I know there was some discussion in committee about it potentially expanding, and so there is always the possibility that they are exploring other opportunities for it.
Yeah, because I believe the question was adding school workers to it, right?
Yeah, and I know it does affect those in Durham County, and it's been sponsored and supported by representatives in Durham. But I don't know specifically what the holdup was on that particular bill, and have not seen it be recalendared or removed,
Okay.
moved in a different way.
Totally fair. Thank you so much.
Sure. Sure.
Council members, any other questions for Mr. Palmer? I had a question. I think this was House Bill 765 or 756. What is it? It's probably 765. The one you were just talking about with the penalties, potential us having to pay, damages and whatnot. So let's just say that made it over the finish line, which I hope it doesn't. How would that be covered, for elected officials? I know the league, has risk management, and that's the first thing that I thought about, but I don't know if it would track in that avenue or go in a different direction.
Specific to the penalty provisions attached to House Bill 171, which is the DEI legislation.
Oh, is that the one? It wasn't.
Yes, ma'am. There are some other penalties. There were previously penalties that existed in House Bill 765.
65.
Many of those have been removed in the
Okay.
most recent update to that piece of legislation. Overarchingly related to penalties as it reflects back to local government officials, I would certainly defer to my colleagues in the legal department at the league to provide additional guidance and advice as to that. But do know that they are reviewing these pieces of legislation to understand what the actual directed impact could be.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Thank you for that, Mr.
Yes, ma'am.
Palmer.
Thank you.
Looks like there aren't any further questions. We appreciate you coming.
Thanks so much.
Sharing the information. Town Manager Tony, next item.
Next item is a annual update of our financial report, and our CFO is going to introduce our independent auditor.
Hey, good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm here to introduce Leanne Bagasala from the town's external and independent audit firm, Malden & Jenkins LLC. She will give an update on the fiscal year 2024, the year ending June 30th, 2024. So I'll hand it over to her.
Yeah, sorry.
I didn't know if
I had opened it. It should be open, yeah. No, I'm sorry about that. Here we go. I think we had a formatting issue. Here we go.
All right, good evening. My name is Leanne Bagasala. I'm an audit director at Malden & Jenkins, and this was our first year serving as the town's external audit firm. We currently also serve as Orange County's external auditor and the town of Chapel Hill, so we're over in this area a lot of times, and we have an office in Raleigh, North Carolina. So for the presentation tonight, I'm going to give you an idea of who your engagement team is. These are the people that are responsible for performing your external audit. I'll go through all of your audit opinions. There are 4 of them. No, there's 3 of them, sorry. And then we'll go through a couple slides of required communications. We'll go through a couple GASB pronouncements that are coming up. And then at any time, please feel free to ask questions. So this slide here depicts who Maldens and Jenkins is. We are a firm that has over 100 years of service. We are based out of Atlanta, Georgia, but we operate in 6 states and have 14 offices. A third of our practice is government. And so we have over 25 partners that serve in our government practice. And I actually spend 100% of my time on North Carolina governments. I currently have about 30 clients in the state of North Carolina. I served as your engagement director. I was the one that ultimately signed your audit opinions. Tim Lyons served as your quality review partner. He is also the partner in charge of our North Carolina and South Carolina office, and he does a review to make sure that he does an independent review, and his review basically ensures that we are doing our audit correctly and that we have a basis for our opinion. Kayla served as your engagement manager, and then you had several other audit staff that worked on the town's audit. Altogether, we spent between 400 and 500 hours on the audit. The first audit opinion that you received in front of your financial statements gives an understanding of what our responsibilities are and what our opinion is. Our responsibility is to consider the internal control structure for the purpose of expressing an opinion on the town's basic financial statements, but not for the purpose of providing an opinion on the effectiveness of internal control. Our audit was performed in accordance with generally accepted accounting standards as well as government auditing standards. Our objective is to provide reasonable but not absolute assurance that the basic financial statements are free of material misstatements, but ultimately the financial statements are the responsibility of the town's management. For your report on your basic financial statements, you received an unmodified or clean audit opinion that your financial statements present fairly in accordance with generally accepted accounting standards, but our responsibility does not extend beyond that report. We did want to note that we also issued a separate audit report for the Carrboro Tourism Department Authority, and we issued an unmodified or a clean audit opinion over that, and that is noted here because they roll into your financial statements as a component unit. And this is the first year, I believe, that we issued separate financial statements for them. The last 2 audit opinions you have are in the back of your financial statements. The first one we like to call a yellow book report, but this is a financial reporting package that contains the report on our testing of the town's internal controls and compliance with laws and regulation. The report is not intended to provide an opinion on the internal controls, nor is it intended to provide a legal determination of compliance with laws and regulations. That report is performed in accordance with generally accepted accounting standards. You did receive an unmodified or a clean audit opinion for that report, but we did note one material weakness, which is a restatement of prior year balances. And we'll go through that in the next slide. Also this year, we added a third opinion to your financial statements, and that was because in the current year, you spent a lot of ARPA funds. So we were required to perform what's called a single audit over the ARPA funds, which is a federal grant. So we issued a report over the town's federal programs in accordance with the Uniform Grant Guidance. That report contained an unmodified opinion, and we did not find any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses related to controls over compliance for the ARPA program. We did have one prior period restatement that is included in your financial statements, and just so that you have an understanding of this finding, anytime that we have to restate prior year balances, you automatically would receive a material weakness, and this is something that was already addressed, so the financial statements that you see presented in front of you already have this restatement included. There was a restatement to the government activities as well as stormwater, fund, and business type activities to increase the compensated absence calculation from the prior year. The calculation did not have FICA and Medicare taxes in it, so we needed to add that to it because when you pay that liability to employees, you're not only paying their payroll, their salary, or their hourly rate, you're also paying those taxes as well. So we added that to your fiscal year as if we were adding it to your fiscal year 2023 statements. And then we also had an adjustment in the general fund and the government activities fund. The net value is $41,000. There was an there was an overstatement of your lease receivable and your deferred inflow in the prior year. And that net amount was $41,000. And that was related to the GASB statement 87, where you have to record leases on your financial statements. Okay. This next slide here is called a financial performance indicators that we are required to let the council know about. The Local Government Commission requires that the auditor submit what's called a data input form when we submit the financial statements to them for review. And the LGC is currently, that's the Local Government Commission, they're currently reviewing the financial statements. They actually were emailing us about it today. So we know that they're looking at it. And the LGC came up with what are called financial performance indicators of concern. And basically, when you put your information into this form, it does trigger a couple things. And the things that were triggered as part of this data input form was that the audit was submitted late for fiscal year 2024, as well as there was a material weakness. And what the town council is required to do is to respond to these financial performance indicators of concern within 60 days of my presentation. And that's just telling the Local Government Commission how you will address that in the future. So the first one would be, we intend to issue the financial statements timely in fiscal year 2025. We're working with the auditor on the timeline to make sure that that is completed timely. I will say that for fiscal year 2025 audits, the due date is no longer October 31st, it is December 31st. So that does give the town some additional time to work through anything that's needed to make sure that we're issuing timely. And then management has already created a corrective action plan for that material weakness that we mentioned. And so that's kind of already been documented and has already been corrected. So you would just let the Local Government Commission know what those action steps were. And that has to be signed by a majority of the town council. A couple slides of required communication. These are presented to you in the form of the PowerPoint presentation. Sometimes you would see a letter, but we do those through a PowerPoint presentation. So the first one is that there are a lot of accounting policies that are included within your financial statements and help derive your financial statements. Those are the responsibility of management, and those are noted in Note 1 of your basic financial statements. During the current year, the town did implement GASB Statement 100 related to accounting changes and error corrections. That is because there was an error correction in the prior year issued statements. And that just added additional footnote disclosures at the end of your financial statements. We reviewed the significant accounting policies that the town had, and we determined that they were in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. We are not aware that the town is engaged in any controversial or emerging issues. Also within your financial statements are a lot of accounting estimates that management has determined based on their knowledge, expertise, and about past and current events. And some of the estimates that are included in your financial statements are actuarially determined. And again, as part of our review, we do look at management's estimates, and we did not find any issues with those. As far as the relationship with management, we received full cooperation from town's management and staff. We had no disagreements as part of our audit. We do require that the town sign what's called a management representation letter in order to issue the financial statements. And that is where management basically signs that they have provided accurate information and it was complete and accurate in various forms as we requested. The third bullet here says that we are not aware that management has consulted with any other accountants. We ask that throughout the year, if management has any questions that we could answer, we'd be happy to serve throughout the year to make sure that things are properly accounted, especially when you have implementations of new standards. And the last bullet on this slide says that there were no significant issues discussed with management. As part of our audit, we received the trial balance or the general ledger for the town in order to issue our audit opinions. And any adjustments that we found during the audit were made to your books and records. There were no entries that the town passed on adjusting. They posted everything that we asked them to post. Within your financial statements, you have 50-plus pages of footnote disclosures. As part of our our review of your financial statements, we determined that those disclosures were neutral, consistent, and provided clarity. And then the third slide here says that the information in your financial statement, our opinion does not extend beyond the information in your financial statements. And if you were to reproduce our financial statements and hand it out to anyone, please don't add to or take away from the financial statements. And the last disclosure here is that Malden and Jenkins is independent of the town and the TDA and their respective reporting financial processes. This next slide is just a list of information for you all to be able to reference if needed. There are a lot of advisory type services that we can provide as an audit firm. So we have a different group of folks that specialize in providing different types of services that are listed here on the PowerPoint slides. Some of them we can do and maintain our independence as your auditor, and some that we cannot. But this just gives you an idea if there's any type of performance measurement type information that you want to gather, strategies, list a whole bunch of different things that we have experience performing. So the next couple slides, I'm not going to read these gigantic paragraphs with very small words in them, but there are a couple of pronouncements that are coming down the pipeline, and GASB Statement 101 related to compensated absences is effective for the fiscal year ended 2025. And we will be working with the town's manager to make sure the understanding of that as needed and to make sure it's properly implemented in your fiscal year 2025 financial statements. If we implement that and determine it is material to the town, you will restate prior year issued financial statements. However, that would be a change in accounting principle. It would not be a material weakness. But just to forewarn you that that would be coming up as a prior period adjustment. There are two other disclosures up here, and as these become applicable for the town and anything that needs to be done, we'll work with the town to make sure that these are properly implemented. There are also some great projects that are ongoing in GASB that are also listed here. We actually have our partner Tim serving on the committee related to going concern, and those drafts, as they come out, we review any GASB drafts, and similar to what the League of Municipalities was just saying, very involved in anything that's coming out to make sure that we're in agreement with the projects that are coming out and the new pronouncements that are coming out. So there's several slides of these if you would like to read those. All that does mean is that it is additional work for the town to make sure that they're properly implementing all these new standards that are coming out. And the last slide here does tell you, as an additional service for being our client, we do offer free CPE to those that need it to maintain their license, and that's generally 32 hours a year of free training that we can sign individuals up for and you can attend on a quarterly basis. Does anyone have any questions?
I don't know, but thank you for the presentation. Council members, are there any questions? We're just being asked to receive the presentation. Councilmember Frey, did you have something?
I do have a couple, but I'm not sure if they're best directed to our auditor or the CFO, so I'll just sort of
Pop it
ask.
out and see.
Yeah. I'll preface this by saying that that in my day job, I am a consultant for a public accounting firm. So while I am not an accountant, I have a passing familiarity with external audit and a little extra curiosity, maybe.
Okay.
Do we have the correction plan you said for our material weaknesses already?
Yeah, the corrective action plan is the last page of your financial statements.
Okay, great, thank you. Let me see here. Yeah, I think most of the rest of these questions are actually for our CFO.
Okay.
All right, thanks. So I wanted to ask if you could give a little context about the audit coming in late, sort of what contributed to that and how we're planning to avoid that next time.
Absolutely. From what I understand, Forvis, the town's auditor for fiscal year 2023, indicated pretty late after the conclusion of fiscal year 2024 that they did not have the capacity to complete the town of Carrboro's audit. It's significantly later than what I understand most firms would indicate that to a municipality. As a result, the town then had to post a RFP to find an audit firm to conduct that audit. And Malden & Jenkins has a lot of clients that are already lined up. So to fit us in, we really appreciate Malden and Jenkins and the partnership that the town has with the town. But I would say exactly that it was due to a change unscheduled.
Thank you. And that, I think you've also now answered my second question, which was why the new auditor, so that answers that very neatly. Thank you. For the benefit, we've got the materials, but it's hard to, when you go through the financial statements and you get to the corrective action plan for the material weaknesses, it can be kind of hard for ordinary folks to parse that stuff.
Sure.
Do you mind summarizing for us roughly like what actions the town's taking to correct those issues that we had?
Sure. We've updated some of our internal documentation on how we go about calculating, for one, compensated absences. That is a town estimated liability of if someone were to, say, separate from employment at the town, how much the town may have to pay out. So we have an obligation to keep an amount on our books for that, and that calculation previously did not include something like FICA. So, here internally, we would typically, find that and be able to pay that, but for proper accounting, we need to have that on the books, if you will.
Thank you. Is it the same for the incorrect lease accounting that we updated our documentation to make clear to staff how that's supposed to be handled?
That is correct.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. That's all
Sure,
of my questions.
absolutely. And thank you very much for Mr. Darrell Keys, our Deputy Finance Director, and Leanne. They've been such a pleasure to work with, and this was a very laborious process, so I just thank them. Thank you.
All right. Shout out to Mr. Keys and Leanne. Which one is Leanne?
I'm here.
Oh, you from over there. I thought it was town staff. I'm sorry, my bad. Council members, any other questions for the CFO or for Leanne?
Thank you.
All right, so we have received the presentation, and thanks so much. It was great. Appreciate it. So the next item, what we've all been waiting for, drum roll. Should I introduce the item? I'm just kidding. All right.
Daryl's going to pass around the presentation, but the third item is the manager's, that's me, recommended budget for fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2025 through June 30th of 2026. This budget is balanced and it's just a recommended budget. And so I just wanted to be clear. Number one, this is the first time the budget has been presented in this manner. Prior to that was just a budget outlook to make sure we heard council's priorities in consideration of balancing the budget. What I'll say is everything is not in there. We did try to incorporate as much as possible and balance with taking into consideration our property tax rate above revenue neutral. So you'll hear some of those specific key points in Chaz's presentation, but we were very diligent and looked at departments and trying to figure out how do we get in as much as we can and not superseding what a normal increase in the property tax rate would be, which is still really high above our revenue neutral rate. So I'll turn it over to Chaz. We'll be glad to answer questions, but also keep in mind that there's time to absorb this after tonight, and staff will be open to questions and an adjusted budget if you also choose, if you want to get in other priorities that you don't see included. Okay, turn it over to Chaz, who's going to present on my behalf.
Thank you, Manager Tony, and good evening again, Mayor and Town Council. Stand before you today to present the manager's recommended budget for fiscal year 25-26, beginning this July 1st. So the agenda, we will go over a total budget overview. our major budget drivers, both on the expenditure and revenue side, and our capital enterprise and other special revenue funds that the town budgets and accounts for. As Manager Tony stated a moment ago, the exercise in here was to strike a balance between a lot of major budget priorities and a lot of changing realities in the economic landscape, while also maintaining quality of life for town residents. A big focus on fiscal responsibility, and we asked all departments to view their budget and their work through the town pillars of race, equity, and sustainability. Up first is our total budget overview. And this first slide is a summary of all funds that are in the manager's recommended budget. The expenditure budget for all funds totals $62.54 million. That is down from prior year total budget of $68.3 million. That is primarily attributed to the special revenue funds, ARPA funds, and a grant fund that we would typically budget throughout the year rather than through an original budget. So that is the main discrepancy here, but you will see growth in the general fund and still year two funding that to continue capital projects that were authorized last year. This is again a summary of those expenditures by fund. So $36.6 million general fund budget, $22.2 million capital projects fund, $1.9 million for all special revenue funds, $1.7 million for the stormwater fund, and $132,000 for the parking fund. To zoom in more on the general fund, the town has four major categories that we track for budget and accounting purposes, that being personnel, operations, debt service, and transfers. Our total personnel recommended budget, $20.8 million for operations, $11.9 million, debt service, $1.5 million, and transfers budgeted to other town funds in the amount of roughly $2.5 million for a total general fund budget of $36.7 million. Those budgetary categories reflect the cost of payroll and benefits for the town, departmental operating and program costs, principal and interest payments on debt that was previously issued, and interfund transfers, which we discussed a moment ago, transfers to other town funds. Those primarily include contributions to capital projects for year one funding, contributions to the Affordable Housing Fund, and any other funds where the town budgets for its projects. This is a look at the expenditures by category within the general fund. You will see growth in personnel to reflect the growing cost of salary and benefits, and more that we'll discuss in a little bit. But the operations budget did decrease in the manager's recommended budget from fiscal year 2025. Debt service also reduced by about $15,000. That is attributed to lower interest payments in future years, so we should see debt service continue to decrease for the debt that is currently issued. And then transfers out increased to $2.48 million. To zoom in a little bit more on those transfers, we talked about $2.48 million for transfers out to other funds. That includes a contribution of $1.77 million to the Capital Projects Fund to help fund year one of capital projects that are recommended in the budget. $132,000 for the Parking Fund. That is to offset there's no fee revenue coming into the parking fund, so that provides for the expenses of that fund. And a contribution to affordable housing equivalent to 1.5 cents for this current year at a revenue neutral rate, and an additional ½ cent on the new tax rate. A look at recommended budget expenditures by department. This is for your reference, and tomorrow a full recommended budget document will be published, and it'll have all the details and all the specifics, but this is a breakdown of the expenditures by department and the general fund. Some of the major budget drivers. So for number one, for personnel, $20.6 million in the recommended personnel budget. Recommended personnel budget included no net new positions. I focus on just maintaining the existing staff levels for the town. There were increases to health and retiree insurance and required increases to the North Carolina local government employees retirement system, both for local government and for law enforcement. 5% wage increases is recommended in the manager's recommended budget as well for employees. For operations, a net reduction across the general fund of $246,000. The emphasis was maintaining current service levels. Where we did have one-time expenses in the budget, to remove those. We really asked departments, and we really appreciate them helping us to minimize the needs for next year. There is, growing costs and the cost of doing business, but the entire town took great effort to reduce operating expenses in the manager's recommended budget. It also funds a continuation of free transit services in the amount of $2.38 million, funding for sustainability programs and initiatives, and funding for human services grants, a continuation of that program with new funding added. For transfers, spoke some about this a moment ago, but the town contribution required for year one of the capital investment plan, $1.77 million of recommended transfer from the general fund to the capital projects fund. Affordable housing allocation at a revenue neutral amount of the 1.5 cent that is currently authorized, and the recommendation for an additional 1/2 cent of tax revenue to be contributed to the affordable housing fund. And again, parking fund subsidization due to no fee revenue in that fund. I'm sorry for the formatting issue here. I think we are using a different version of PowerPoint on this computer here. But this is a summary of the town's recommended capital investment plan by town department. There are a variety of projects within each of these departments, primarily PZI, 20 projects. I think Public Works is roughly 5 or 10. Those are all included in the appendices of the slides that you all have been handed, and will be included in the recommended budget document on tomorrow. A total year one general fund contribution of $1.77 million. The total year one budget that council would be adopting is a $22.63 million budget. Much of that is offset through debt issuance or outside funding. And then years 2 to 5 estimates on each of those projects are provided on the idea that if council is approving year one funding, it's very likely this is, for the duration of the capital project, the town would be on the hook for the remaining $38.76 million over 5 years. To switch gears from expenditures to revenues, the town's true revenues that are recommended for fiscal year 26 are $32.77 million. The town's primary revenue source is property taxes. 53.3% of our revenue source derives from property taxes, with 19.8% coming from sales taxes. There is a fund balance appropriation, which we have a slide to discuss in a moment. But that would account for 10.62% of the general fund revenues budget for a total of $36.67 million. Some of our primary major budget drivers for revenue include a property tax recommendation of 56.53 cents. That is up from a revenue neutral rate of 46 cents. There's no sales tax growth that we estimate for fiscal year 2026. We did, however, recognize growth from some of our existing revenue streams where the town had previously not tapped into budgeting for those increases in those revenue streams. The fund balance appropriation of $3.1 million is for one-time interfund transfers and initiatives, and there is an additional one-time fund balance appropriation to offset what would be a more significant property tax increase recommendation. The idea was to phase in a more structurally balanced budget. So while that property tax rate increase of 9.72 cents over revenue neutral, the idea was to soften the blow through a phased implementation of offsetting recurring expenditures with revenues that are recurring in nature. This is a closer look at the property tax. So 60.44 cents is the town's currently adopted property tax rate. It has been that for the last several years. As a result of the tax office's revaluation in fiscal year 25, the revenue neutral tax rate that the town must publish is 46.81 cents. The recommended increase above that is 9.72 cents for a total of 56.53 cents. Of that, there's an additional half cent for the Affordable Housing Fund. A slide to indicate the tax rate impact on residents. This is an example of a home valued at $200,000 under a revenue neutral rate. That tax bill would currently be $936.20. If the recommended budget and recommended tax rate were to be approved, a town tax bill would be $1,130.60. To show a slide of our fund balance from the last several years, a portion of our general fund, or as a proportion to our general fund expenditures, the town's target is to maintain a fund balance between 22.5 and 35%. When Malden and Jenkins presented a moment ago in our financial statements, we indicate roughly a $14.1 million unassigned fund balance. However, about $5.5 million of that is devoted to ARP-enabled projects. And since then, an additional 2.39 has been appropriated in fund balance. That would leave remaining unassigned as of today of $6.18 million. So although the 14.1 would indicate above 35%, when the ARP-enabled projects are backed out, it is below that amount. And that concludes the highlights for the manager's recommended budget. There are appendices, again, which indicate the summary of capital improvement plan projects. It also includes a summary of expenditure budget by function or service area. The timeline for budget moving forward for budget development is there's a council business meeting on May 20th, which is also a budget public hearing. A second budget public hearing on June 3rd with the ability for council to make a motion to adopt, and if needed, an additional council meeting for budget on June 17th where that motion to adopt could occur if it were delayed from June 3rd. Tomorrow, the recommended budget tomorrow afternoon will be dropped or made available rather here at Town Hall, at the Drakeford, at Fire Station 1, and I believe the Century Center. I'll have to get with Mr. Darrell on that, but our intention is to post this document online along with these slides and make them available for inspection by the public at town facilities.
All right, thank you so much, Chaz. Can you go back to that slide that you just moved away from? So, when was our last council meeting? I'm looking because it says June 17th, if needed, suggesting potentially that we might approve the budget on June 3rd, but June 17th is available. Would that have been the last one? It would be the last one. Okay. I don't know. I was just wondering, council members, I don't know what your feeling is about needing another work session, or do you feel like we can get what we need in a regular business meeting as it relates to discussion, which is fine with me, but I did want to ask. I feel like we're not going to need it. So shaking of heads saying in the business meeting should work. Okay. Council members, questions for Chaz, our CFO? Councilmember Frey.
Chaz, just to start out, because I know that fund accounting kind of makes my head hurt, and so for the folks watching in the audience or at home, help me if you would, sort of walk us through how to understand these great slides that you have on the recommended capital budget. So you've got a column for each project, you've got a column for the year one general fund contribution, the total year one budget, and then the years 2 through 5. If you could help folks understand, so if they're looking at the total expenditure number, how do they sort of contextualize those numbers that don't seem to add up with these columns?
Absolutely. The total year one budget is what council would formally be authorizing the town to incur up to in expenses in the coming fiscal year. The general, as part of that $22.6 million, there are a variety of funding sources. Some are external, some could be derived from debt issuance. Those details will follow in the CIP and are indicated in those capital project summaries. The portion that the town would have to pay for on its own is that $1.77 million, and there would be a need to pay for that immediately. So that is the $1.77 million is what we expect up front to, at a minimum, have to incur in fiscal year 26.
Understood. So just to take a random example, under PZI, there's a line for Bowling Creek Greenway 3 and 4. And it shows 0 is the year one general fund contribution, 0 is the total year one budget, and so on. So I think because this had come up in public comment, I just wanted to mention this. So
Absolutely.
how does that funding process work when we have a project that goes in? Then why would we be talking about funding a project but then not see it in the year one budget?
Bowling Creek 3 and 4 was not recommended for funding in year one. The recommended budget does not include an appropriation for Bowling Creek 3 and 4. There is an estimate for that amount in years 2 to 5. The manager's recommended budget does establish that as a capital project should council want to fund that, but there is no funding immediately authorized in year one for that expense.
Great, thank you. I know there's a considerable shift in the IT budget around software subscriptions. Do you mind giving a general summary of what kind of software? Is this new software subscriptions that are being added, or is this an increase in the fees that we're paying for existing subscriptions, or some of both?
It was a combination of both. We took effort to allocate out, if those software initiatives were new technology initiatives, to allocate those to the departments who are requesting those. There were some increases, though, that the town saw from implementing software agreements in prior years, and as a result, there contractually may have been some increases that the town was now on the hook to to continue service. So a combination of both there.
I think that's all my questions for the moment. Thank you.
Now.
Sure.
Thank you, Councilmember Frey. I'm going to go to Palmer and then to Councilmember Haven O'Donnell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to start by saying it's very clear that a ton of work went into this and a ton of thought went into this. So thank you to the manager and thank you to you for presenting this, all this detail. This is really great. I really appreciate it. I'm gonna piggyback on that Bowling Creek Greenway question because we did have the public comment. I think it's no secret. I'm happy to I have to run again this fall to keep my seat, and I will run on saying that I agree that we should move fast. It's hard to get 70+% of a group of people to agree to apple pie and baseball. And we had a lot of public enthusiasm in our award-winning engagement process around it. And so I guess I'll start with, there's 0 up front here. Does that mean that 0 design work would happen in year 1 under this current budget? Okay, I see a nod.
And
So,
forward, that is correct.
so my recommendation to this council is that we figure out a way to have some percentage, some amount of design work on Bolin 3-4 happen in year 1, that we move fast.
Thank you, Councilmember Palmer. Councilmember Haven O'Donnell.
Yeah, thank you, Chaz and Daryl and the folks who worked on this. This is, and the manager, it's, this looks great. 2 questions. One, I had asked back in April if there's some, you're shaking your head, you know what I'm going to say.
Yes, or I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you short.
No, but you know what I'm aiming for.
Go ahead and say
You're
it.
looking
The
for a
holistic
calculate.
picture
Oh,
of
okay.
how our taxpayers are impacted.
Other than from us.
Right.
Is that what you-
What is the overall picture?
Yes, and I think you were looking for including OWASA rate increases.
Correct.
And, yep.
Correct. So that, you know, we are not only transparent with the town's money, but that we're demonstrating to the community that we recognize what is happening from where they are.
Sure. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I know the manager, you know, we had an understanding throughout the process that there is a burden that residents are experiencing. And so that was front of our mind when developing the budget. Some of those fees we couldn't speak to directly since the town is not directly assessing those fees. We'd be happy to try to put together an estimate and a calculator that includes a property tax recommendation and some of those assumptions, and try to put together a full calculator for a resident.
Yeah, and we know what, for example, a wash is going to be.
Yep.
And in the example that was given, I think it was very kind to give the example for the tax rate impact on residents' home value is $200,000. I don't know where you're going to find a home that's anywhere close to that. in
You could multiply
Carrboro.
it by 3
just
or
multiply
4.
Well, I'd rather see it be,
Sure.
you know, at least 450 or so, you know, I mean, let's be honest with
So
what.
that would be roughly $2,000 and then roughly $4,260.
Excuse me, this is for the public, and I don't think, I don't want the public to have to ask for the math. So, yeah, if that could be done, that would be more realistic. And then, you know, I appreciate the question about Bowling Creek 3 and 4. How much would that add to the cost were we to consider that design, the 1.4 million, if that was going to be added in to the tax rate or any part of it in the year 1?
It would depend on that specific amount. I would have to confer with the manager and with the PZI to determine that.
So if first of all, if we considered the 1.4 and then what it would look like in part, because I think folks need to know exactly what that would add to the tax burden.
Sure.
I think there's a idealistic argument for wanting the amenity, but there is also the reality of what that would actually cost in payout. And I agree with what was said earlier. We do not know how many folks in our community are being furloughed. I know EPA ORD they dismantled this past Friday. I know that there's folks who are, are looking down the barrel at whether or not they can take early retirement from federal positions. I don't know how that impacts Carrboro herself, but being a bedroom community of RTP and the university itself and the other universities local to us, I don't think we will know by June what that looks like. So I'm just raising that question for us to grapple with, and so that we, folks coming in between the May 20th and, and June 3rd, they understand that we care about their bottom line. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Haven O'Donnell. I have Councilmember Posada.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thanks for the presentation. I was looking forward to this. Talk to me about fund balance, right? So if I'm understanding correctly, we're pulling 10% of next year's budget from the fund balance. What does that look like over the next couple of years? How sustainable is it? 'Cause I do correct me if I'm wrong, but we pulled from the fund balance in the previous number of years that we've passed budget. So what does that look like long term?
That is correct, and I think one of the more concerning practices that our town auditor or the LGC may mention is using a considerable portion of fund balance to offset expenditures that are recurring in nature. The town did appropriate roughly $4 million this past year, $4.1 million of fund balance to offset recurring expenditures. That is part of what is challenging this budget cycle is we are probably going to eat away at our fund balance this current fiscal year, and then we're in a deficit from the get-go when looking at fiscal year 26. So when we look at it from an audited financial statement standpoint, as of June 30th, 2024, we had $14.1 million. Of that, 5.53 was attributed to ARP-enabled projects, which are rebudgeted for in the general fund. There's also an appropriation of an additional $2.39 million, so that only leaves a $6.18 million remaining unassigned as of today. Now we'll monitor our spending moving into year end to ensure we don't tap too much into fund balance, but it is something we look at, and one of the priorities of the manager's recommended budget was to attempt to offset the town's recurring expenditures with revenues that are more recurring in nature and shift away from an appropriation of fund balance to cover a gap. So the fund balance that is appropriated is more for one-time needs.
Yeah, that's thanks for that. And then I know that while we're going down a percentage, we're going in actual dollar value is going up because the property values. So talk to me a little bit more about where that recommendation stands, right? Seeing that 10% is coming from the fund balance, why only 54 cents, I think it was, versus something different?
It could be, more if we were to eliminate any fund balance for one-time expenditures. There was a modest appropriation of fund balance for. I need to get back to that slide. There is an appropriation of fund balance of $734,000. That was to attempt to phase in a structurally balanced budget. If the suggestion from council were to try to completely right-size and have no reliance on fund balance for recurring expenditure recommendations, it would be a property tax recommendation at an equivalent amount. of the $734,000. That would be roughly 2 additional cents.
Okay. That's helpful. And switching gears over, and I just will let staff know, I mean, not staff, the council know that I'm more in favor of figuring out how we rely less on fund balance. I don't like the practice of every year after year, going back into it. And then, I've spoken to several folks on this dais around what it would mean should there's an emergency or something like that. I don't want our fund balance to be depreciated as much. So I would very much be in favor of exploring maybe not a full amount, but something that relies less on fund. And then switching gears over to the Bowling Creek, I'm also I'm looking at the little chart here, and I don't know where the 1.4 comes from because I only see 1.2, but that's neither here nor there. I know that we all make mistakes when we look at documents. It says it's a 2 to 5 year estimate. Should we want to move forward with Bowling Creek, what is the actual amount that would move into the year 1 category? Do you have an idea?
I do not. Unfortunately, I would have to get with the manager and the department to see what if we were to move some of that funding into year 1, what that would look like. The 1.2 was a year 3 through 5 estimate, 2 through 5 estimate rather.
I'm sorry.
We could
I
do
think,
that.
Oh, I'm sorry, Chaz. Oh, my God.
No, sorry.
I think Becca may have thrown that number out to us, but was it Becca? That we got it from somewhere. It was 1.4 million. I feel like it may have come from one of her updates, but it was very much, I believe, a ballpark figure.
Yeah.
Easily, probably,
That number has since
could
been
be more.
updated by the PZI director.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Sorry,
Yeah.
Chaz. What were you
No.
saying? Or are you, Councilmember?
Well, no, that's what I was looking at, right? Because I'm looking at the chart that's here, and there's 1.2, and 2 to 5. So, I'm very curious and to understand what should we want to move forward with Bowling Creek in the next year. What does that look like? What is the amount? And then also, we have to figure out if we move forward where that money comes from. I know that I'm bringing up 2 different pieces here, right? Not going into our fund balance, still moving some of our key priorities that have been still for 14, 15 years. So those are 2 key things for me. So I want to see what that looks like. Ultimately, I'm very much in favor of figuring out moving away from fund balance dependency. I think that's kind of my big takeaway from this budget. And if we can work in moving forward with one of the Bowling Creek, something with Bowling Creek I would be in favor of that. But yeah, that would conclude. And I look forward to the full book. That helps me understand these things a lot more. For anybody who knows out there, I usually go to OpenEye and spend all of Sunday reviewing that, so happy to join me if you want. Madam Mayor, pass it back to you.
Thank you. I like that our town manager is smiling. I think that's a good thing. She's listening, she's smiling, so, yeah. So I do agree with Councilmember Posada about the fund balance. It does make me very nervous to dip in. We have, and here we are again. So I do want to kind of follow up with that. And also as it relates to Bowling 3 and 4, did we not talk about grants, pursuing grants or some other type of funding mechanism? I don't know how likely it is in this environment to be able to do that, but what was it? Was it the regional? Do you remember what I'm talking about? The regional flex funding, maybe?
The rapid funding.
Was it rapid?
So regional flexible funding
Right.
would be another funding cycle, and Tina can check me here, that would come up through Triangle West. The way that we have come to, I think that we submitted 3 and 4 design to RFF last cycle, and I think that it was not funded. And so the reason we have come to the idea of paying for design on our end is that regional flexible funding in particular, SPOT to a certain extent, but certainly RFF, is going to prioritize projects that are further along in the process. And so the thought is, if we go down this road, and if I'll circle back to this for some of my own thinking and thoughts and questions. that we would, ideally be paying for this 10% so as to unlock that, then $12.8 million, which would still be a big nut for RFF to cover, but it might be likelier, like we could think about phasing the project, into things like that, if we had the design undertaken for the network.
Yeah, you can go ahead. Yeah, I'm finished for now. Go ahead,
Let's go
Councilmember.
back to the fund balance appropriation of $734,887. Isn't that money that we have to pay off on what we took out prior last year?
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question. You said took out.
The fund balance appropriation of the $734,887, isn't that money that has to be paid back for what was taken out prior to pay for, the personnel last year?
I don't believe so in this case. I believe the increase to the property tax rate and the manager's recommended budget is an attempt to right-size
Alleviate that
That's
pressure.
correct. Yep. And
So, but the fund balance appropriation of 3.1 million, right? That is from money that we have to reimburse?
I do not believe so. That 3.1 million is appropriated for these one-time
Fund.
expenses, yes, like interfund transfers and one-time initiatives. So we took care to ensure no fund balance outside of that 734,000 was appropriated for recurring expenses. So the property tax increase, to that initial question about the 4.1 million that was appropriated, that was primarily for 10%, the adjustment last year you're referring to, and some other recurring expenses. This, the manager's recommended budget finds revenue for, to pay for those.
But, so it's my understanding that the fund balance appropriation of the 734,887 is to put us on a schedule so that we achieve the balance that we're supposed to be at.
That is
that
correct.
incorrect?
That is correct.
That's correct.
So why wouldn't we do that? I mean, I'm not understanding why we would question whether or not we would pay out that expense in order to be on track to rectify. Is that correct? Am I understanding that correctly?
That is correct. I think you're suggesting if there were recurring revenue in the amount of 734,000 rather than a one-time fund balance appropriation, you are correct. Your point is correct.
Okay.
So while Councilmember Haven O'Donnell is thinking, I know the town manager did talk about this to mitigate some of the impact to taxpayers and to address some of the previous multi-year somewhat imbalances. This is where this is coming from.
That's correct.
So it was those two items. Who am I with? Is it Frey? You? And not you?
I can be later.
Wait, let me get Mayor Pro Tem and then Frey and, yeah.
Well, so I think maybe restating, trying to yes and a little bit here, it would be, is it accurate to say that the 3.8 reflected here sort of is the figure, with the increase in the, or not increase, but increase relative to the revenue neutral rate, would that increase and this appropriation from the fund balance, those are a combined effort to address the trend that we have been, we are restoring a more sustainable fund balance approach with this appropriation being one-time expenses in tandem with the increasing recurring expenses, yes?
That's right. Can I just clarify a few things? I want to be clear that we started out with a gap. So when you heard Chaz present the budget outlook, just to be aware that there were 2 years that we really didn't address the revenue side of some of our expenditure decisions. we really needed about 7 cents on the tax rate above revenue neutral just to address that, which left us with nothing to factor in for new without exceeding, say, a 10-cent increase, which is astronomical in some way. We did not want to use fund balance. I agree with the statement. As we tried, so that's what had been done in the past. We can't correct that all in one fiscal year to just go up 20 cents on the tax rate to structurally fix the budget, right? So this was kind of a balancing act to say, we'll dip into it a little bit more instead of going up even further on the recommended tax rate. To use a little bit more fund balance. We did have a healthy fund balance. We are and was above the policy around fund balance appropriation. Because we dipped into it the previous fiscal year, we're dipping into it a little now, and then per the auditor and how they look at our opera-enabled funding, that also is a fund balance appropriation. So when you take all of that out, we're left with very little, but still within our policy. So I wouldn't recommend after this fiscal year dipping any further, although there are decisions you still can make. We can't, something would have to give if we did not use fund balance this current year, which would mean no pay increase for staff. We might have to look at some reductions in service levels. I mean, we will have to dip into that, or we go up further on the tax rate. Those are the only two options. To fund Bowling Creek, absolutely. That can be part of the adjusted budget that the council recommends to fund. But keep in mind, we have to find a funding source. That's either fund balance or 3.5 cents on the tax rate is what it will cost additional. A penny now is worth a little less than $400,000. It's around 383 exactly, somewhere in that ballpark. But it's less than 400,000. So if you think 400, round up, that's about what we need for a penny. So I think the adjusted number is 1.2 now, but it was 1.4 million for Bowling Creek 3 and 4. So that's it. That's just kind of where we are. What comes off the plate to fund this? Do we go up on the tax rate? Do we add additional one-time for fund balance? That's possible. We would just get really close to our minimum policy around fund balance retention. And keep in mind, we didn't factor in any sales tax growth. That is, we kept that flat. It could likely go down. We just don't know behavior around sales tax, so we're keeping that flat, assuming no growth, but that's unstable, potentially.
Thank you for that, Town Manager. That does bring the council some clarity. Should we decide to go down that road with Bowling 3 and 4 in the design phase? So fund balance or an additional 3 cents or so. Taxpayers. Okay. I'm going to Mayor Pro Tem now, and then to Councilmember Frey, and I think then to Councilmember Palmer.
Thank you. I mean, I kind of want to drill down on this just a little, just because we've heard so much about it. I would imagine Phase 3 and 4, no surprise to be talking about it tonight. Can you talk us through a little bit of why you have paced it this way?
Yes, basically for the same reasons I just mentioned, the 7 cents, not knowing, right, when we were balancing that structurally we needed to go up 7 cents. Then the 3 additional cents or so gets us almost a 10-cent increase. Normally, a manager wouldn't recommend a 10-cent tax increase, but definitely could lean, this would be just my recommended budget to balance with essentially a 10-cent increase above revenue neutral. Just couldn't factor it in. We tried to slim down even departmental expenditures. And so my recommended budget, if I included it, would have been probably a 14 cent increase or so. And that's fine. But it can actually be added. And so I wanted this to come from the council. If that is something you all decided to make a priority, we would get it in the adjusted budget before adoption.
Thank you. I think I can do this with a nod from Tina, perhaps. But one thing that I'm thinking about here is, I think the next RFF, like 2028. My thinking here is if, it's no secret that I'm a big fan of Bowling Creek Phase 3 and 4 Greenway, and I would like to have gotten it done yesterday. I would like to have. I think what I'm hearing personally, just to offer the perspective of maybe a little bit of optimism, is 2 to 5 years. If our target is RFF, if that's the next likeliest viable funding solution from the state, we are on that timeline with this number. And I would like to have more haste than that, but I don't, I'm looking at these other projects in PZI, and I'm looking at a long list of other things that we have been talking to people about, where the hell is it, that are also, children on roads. We're talking about the South Greensboro sidewalk. We're talking about, Morgan Creek Greenway, that's considerably more shovel ready. We're talking about Estes bike ped, which, that is at least as big a friction point as anything that could be in the fourth. I mean, these are important projects, and in particular, some of them are important to the viability of our vision for Phase 3 and 4. That Estes bike ped is kind of a linchpin to the whole idea that we would be taking VMTs off the street with Phase 3 and 4. We have spent the past couple of years, the way I look at this is a little bit of organizational lifespan, and we have spent the past couple of years with quite a bit of organizational flux, and we have had the cash to maybe change the culture a little bit on moving some priorities forward, and we've relied on the fund balance to do that, and I'm proud of it, and it's been responsible. But we are coming to a time now where I think, faced particularly with the significant increase, this is something that I think we've all, this is a big increase. Our residents are aware that it's coming. I have been really impressed with our residents and sort of their ability to bear up to it. Typically people come to me with concern and maybe a little bit of anger, and we say that we're aware, and your taxes are going to go up. They're not going to go up as much as your reval, but we've been running on 2004 taxes for a long time functionally, and I've been impressed with our residents for the buy-in. Which is to say that I think that this recommended budget is doing pretty well, and I would not personally, I don't know that we're necessarily serving the project better by putting the pedal to the metal at the expense of, we haven't been for the past 3 years talking about possibly being under our minimum on the fund balance, and that is not a comfortable position to be in following, we've had this increase, we've had this revenue increase on our horizon. It will be in the rear view soon. The mana of the reval will not be in front of us, and we have other priorities that need. And so all of this is to say, and I know that there are people who will text me disappointed to say this, but I think for a host of reasons on the particular project, it's not crazy, I think, to have real doubts that Spot is ever going to come back like it has, prior cycles have already been swallowed up by Florence and now Helene, with a changing federal environment. That program might not look like it looked for, it really only worked for Spot 5 relative to our expectations, and that's been a while as it is. So once we design this, we will have to phase it, being practical, to get shovels in the ground. We will have to work with RFF and still probably funding sources that we still don't see. All of which is to say that I think this is a great budget, and I think it does a hard thing. And we've been talking a lot about this one priority that I am a champion of, and I don't think that this is a poor way to steward that project. And I think, for as frustrating as it is to be 16 years not designed on an approved project, it's frustrating to watch people walk up South Greensboro, with a backpack on and crossed fingers, right? And we've all seen children on Estes. And so if I'm looking at realistically, we can't go to 10% to design a project that we don't know how we're going to fund. We can't do that, I think. That's me. We could, but I would have real pause. And so then I think, okay, so what do I want to take off? And I don't have a good answer for that. Nope. So I've been long-winded. I appreciate your forbearance with it. But I think This is really great. Oh, and I do want to make a couple notes just from my personal perspective. I think, like there are $200,000 homes here. There are actually quite a number of them, and like a lot of them are like right next door. And in fact, I don't know the numbers, but it's probably, my own home is not. My own home was more like a factor of 4 after the reval. So, I want to be really clear-eyed that, like I'm not trying to be a hypocrite here. I'm not trying to, I think when we communicate who this budget is for and what it is saying about our town, I think it is currently saying an accessible and democratic thing. And I think that anybody who's in the position that I am in, with a house that is not reflected here, this is still accessible to me. So I just think it's really solid. There are things that, I have to suck it in a little bit on that I wish I didn't. But I'm feeling really confident about this.
Thank you so much, Mayor Pro Tem. Now I'll wait for your phone to blow up. Councilmember Frey, and then, did you have something before? Go ahead,
I just want to
Town
offer
Manager.
something. We have quite a bit of ARPA-enabled money kind of reserved or earmarked and has not gone out. The auditor is going to say something about it if we don't spend it by June 30th. What I'll say is mid-year, we probably need to sunset some of those projects. If they are not off the ground, we don't have contracts, that may free up some funding to go back to our fund balance. That would put us in a better position to consider the use of fund balance mid-year or even by the end of next fiscal year. So I just wanted to note that. I think our fund balance, we're worried to keep dipping into it. A lot of it is as ARPA-enabled earmarked resources. But I think we could free up some of that at some point if not spent.
Good information. Thank you so much. Councilmember Frey.
Thank you. And I have to say, I am really impressed by the balancing act that the manager has performed here, right? The fund balance is the savings account of the town. And from a point of view of somebody's household budget, if you're trying to make a comparison, it is, from a town's point of view, just as bad to have too much fund balance because it means that you are taking in taxpayer money and sitting on it. You're not using it for the benefit of the town, as it is bad to have too little because then you don't have a buffer in the case that something goes wrong. So this is a really sound budget. I wanted to sort of walk through a couple of comparisons, and Chaz, I hope that you will call me if I get this wrong, because as I said, the fund accounting makes my head hurt sometimes. So for scale, I'm going to compare here the personnel budget of the general fund to the operational budget of the general fund, the expenditures, to the CIP budget, just to sort of give people a general sense of what we're talking about when we do this at the town, which is that the general fund for personnel expenditures is just under $21 million. That is more than half of our general fund expenditures, and that's the cost of every single town employee. Salary and benefits. Because without staff, the town does no work. And so that is how we get that work done, as we pay that chunk of the budget. The town operational expenses from the general fund is how the town does everything that's not a special revenue or a capital project. So that's everything from festivals to the gas for the police cars is in that. And that is just under $12 million. So significantly smaller than in other words, if you were to say, hey, how does the town spend its money? Well, out of the general fund, the town spends most of its money on having the staff to be able to perform those town operations. And then the capital, the CIP budget is the year one budget here is about, let's call it a little less than $23 million, so a little bit more than the personnel budget. And that's what we're spending on investments that we're making in the fabric of the town. Fair summary there?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
So I thought that the major budget drivers slide was really helpful because it's giving us a sense of how did we get here. We made a significant increase to personnel salaries because we had a serious problem with recruitment and retention, and because we weren't serving our staff well to enable them to stay and do their jobs, right? We were frankly, Chapel Hill was starting to poach staff from us because they could just say, hey, you don't have to move, but we can pay you more than Carrboro is because you haven't had a raise in how long? So we made a large increase there, but that's a huge chunk of our general fund is coming from personnel. So when we make a significant increase in salaries, it has a big impact on our overall budget. And that's, so my point being that when we're talking about what happened to our unallocated fund balance, we had what we were told at various points was a nearly excessive fund balance, right up at or over our high end of our target. We spent that money basically on getting our salaries to parity, and now we're at a comfortable but not luxurious fund balance, and we're back to, okay, so now we got to keep the wheels turning and continue to make investments. We have a ton of new investments in capital projects here, which I feel like is a really strong reflection on the town putting money behind the priorities that people have to improve the fabric of the town, to enable us to not just maintain our services, but actually make the town a safer and more pleasant place to live. So that to say, I think the last question that I have is about the recommended personnel budget. I wanted to understand this balance between no net new positions and a 5% increase for employees, and understand a little bit about where that's coming from in the manager's recommended budget. I know we had staffing study, and so we had a variety of inputs to try and come to that. We're sort of always balancing between the ability to bring on staff to do more and the ability to retain and recruit staff to maintain what we're already doing. So could you give me a little bit of context about the personnel drivers and how we reach this balance?
Thank you, Councilmember Frey, for the question. Great question. What I'll say is, pretty much once again, there's a lot that we could not include in this budget on the staff side. HR worked with a consultant to do a compensation and class study. On the high end, it was $2.6 million. There was no way we could get that in this year's budget. We talked to Chapel Hill, and Hillsborough does a merit, so they're averaging about 5% increase. So to not continue to be so far behind, that was still important to at least offer this across the board 5% increase for employees. But they recommended some position adjustments, some various compensation for specific type of positions that they studied to increase, but none of the scenarios other than this 5% is the only one that reasonably we could get in to balance the budget. So that's kind of where we are. And it just does not account for even staffing study part 2 is not included. So you all approved a second round of positions. We only did one half last fiscal year. So we're putting a pause on new positions just across the board, other than anything that you all previously approved, like the second social worker. Actually folded that into my base so that that's in there. But outside of that, we're holding the line.
Thank you very much.
I believe it is Councilmember Palmer.
Thank you. I just wanted to say I fully understand we're trying to balance different things, but I've repeatedly heard whether it's 1.4 or 1.2, I don't think that we have to be tied to the full number, the full 3.4. I think if we as a council say we want to allocate $120,000 to moving forward on the Bowling Creek Greenway, we can count on our PZI to figure out what can we move forward in this fiscal year for $120,000, which is, and I leave it to the manager and y'all to figure out where does that come from, what do we exchange, but we can come up with numbers, and respectfully, I understand the idea of tying to RFF, but I also understand that our PZI has talked to us about, there's risks with doing community engagement and communication, and then having too long a lag before the community sees that we're acting on that. And so we have very recently gotten a lot of positive feedback on this, and I think that we need to figure out what is the bite size that we are comfortable with to move forward in some way now. And I will concede, if this council does not have appetite for that, then I will back down. But I feel very strongly that we need to figure out what our appetite is and come up with something. I'm on the flip side of this in my day job, that if somebody comes to me and says, it's never $120,000, I would love for them to give me that much. But if they come to me at year end and say, do you have something in your needs that, and they give me a number, I always do. I can always find it. Because I am structurally underfunded in what I do. And so I just respectfully, pick a number, figure out where we can find that amount, and let's figure out how to move forward by some amount. I understand that under current projections, that's not full design, but let's show the community that we're acting on what they said they wanted, what we said we wanted, and what has long been delayed. Thank you.
So I appreciate that, Councilmember Palmer. I see you, Councilmember Posada. I think you wanted to say something. So $120,000, and I know you just threw that out.
It's 1/10.
Right. Compared to 1.2 million, and I believe Mayor Pro Tem Nowell and I may have had this discussion. It could have been somebody else. I talked to a lot of people, but could it potentially even be more expensive doing it in parts versus going ahead and, doing I'm not the expert. I don't know. That is just something that I was thinking about. I guess that would be potentially for PZI to, see if that was actually the case. But that's just something. But I do appreciate your comment. And we got to figure this out. We have community members on either side of this. It has been like that for a while, and there's been movement now. And you have community members that still don't want it, but also community members that are buying fully into it. And so we're at a jump off point here. With this, and it is up to us as leaders of the town to come to some type of consensus about the direction in which we would like to go, with Council Palmer's recommendation even. But I'm a little fearful about that because it could end up being more expensive, but maybe not. Councilmember Posada.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I think you were more eloquent than I was.
I was not eloquent at all.
Oh, I thought, because this is kind of where my point was coming to, and I think even if it's not the full project, I want to see something move forward. I do think there's some questions that maybe we can get some answers to around what does a bite-sized amount look like? What are some movement? We also know that this project has been way too long, and part of the reason it's been too long to actually move anything on it is because things continue to get delayed. And I do not want us to move back into a place after so much engagement, after so much push to actually move things forward, to again get into a piece of, we'll do it next year. Well, next year comes, we'll do it next year. Or next year comes and we'll move this small piece in 4 years. Like, we want to make sure, like, I'm more on the stance of, even if it's not the full thing, I think we do need to show, and I do think we need to move forward. And, town manager, I also want to say thank you for bringing this to us. I know that there's a lot of work that goes into it, and I know that I'm adding more work to your plate. But as I'm looking at this, I think this is a key piece that I continue to hear. And it's not simply about just the Greenway. We're talking about equity here. And we're talking about folks. It's not a simple amenity. It's something that folks have the privilege of using now versus those who don't, right? And as a council, and as a person of color, as a person who has historically been places where we don't have the ability to use the same privileges of other folks, it's important to me that we
Oh,
move forward with that.
Got some history in. Go ahead.
So, I
Councilmember
mean,
Gasol.
and that's really what it comes down to. I get that folks, there's a lot of opinions on this. I get that this is a project that has been stalled on purpose for over 15 years. I think we have the duty and the responsibility to our community members to move something forward. If it's not the full thing, I understand. It is, we do have to look at budgets, and that is a key issue. We want to make sure that we're also representing our community and making sure that their pocketbooks is not, as we look into the next couple of years, we're not infringing tremendously on our community. But this is also something that has long been stalled, and I do not want to see it pushed more.
Go ahead, Councilmember Haven O'Donnell, then we'll go back to Mayor Pro Tem now. Thank you.
Well, I just want to underscore that it doesn't matter how long this process has been, because it's not the same. We're not in the same world that we were in 2011. Everything is radically changed. And the fact is that there are, aside from the tax implications and the pressure on single-family homeowners because they are the tax base, there's the question of the 5 or 6 unknowns. And to be a steward of public monies, we need to recognize that the Estes Bike and Ped plan has not been determined in terms of which plan they want to use. The Estes extension, the Umstead Bowling Creek extension of the Greenway has not been determined which path they are interested in and what they want to fund. Both those decisions are coming out of Chapel Hill, not Carrboro. Third, the university and their plans for housing on Carolina North in the Horace Williams Airport site. Fourth, the Dean Smith Center and the potential to use the Horace Williams site for the for a new Smith Center. 5, rails to trails coming out of the potential decommissioning of the cogen plant. And 6, the Sewell School Road side path, if and when that is funded and input. Those 6 factors are enormous when you look at creating something, spending money for a design that may have to be altered tremendously if any one of those or the combination of them render something needed that's very different. It's just where we are today. It's not where we were in 2011. It's not where we were in 2013, 2017, 2019, or 2024. It's where we are today with complete unknowns that at least if we knew exactly what Chapel Hill was going to do, and it may be Chapel Hill's plans have to change because of the universities. All I'm saying is, as a steward of taxpayer money, I feel that feeling like we have to do something because we didn't do it yesterday is not enough of a reason to plan to do something when there's so many things that could impact design that we'd be paying for one kind of design when in the future that design could be impacted by 6 different things that we don't know anything about right now.
All right, thank you so much, Councilmember Haven O'Donnell. Mayor Pro Tem now.
Thank you. I think it matters a great deal because look how much time we are spending on $1.2 million relative to the rest of this budget. And think about, 48 minutes or so of resident time for, honest to God, this Greenway is the thing we have talked about most in my time on this council. And Randy, since you seconded this plan in 2009, unanimous on this board and having at one time approved this plan, yourself very much included, in 2011, the world had changed. In 2016, the world had changed. In 2020, the world had changed. And so, I'm looking at staff who are here while we do this. I'm looking at residents who could be at home while we administer a bog standard approved plan. There is the very same waterway.
I
in the
support
very
greenways. I don't want to be
course.
shaded here.
You're not being shaded. You supported this
Do
plan.
not shade me. I
Haven
support
O'Donnell
greenways.
and now.
Don't do that.
Let's not.
This is a matter of public record. You seconded the initial Bowling
I
Creek concept
support
plan.
greenways.
Let's not do this, colleagues. Randy, if you have something else, let's let Danny finish up, and then I can come back to you. Go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
It erodes public trust. It erodes the efficiency of our government. And I'm here articulating a different perspective than two of my colleagues who are a little bit more there's all of this bad faith bullshit about this, where there's a block of us who want to ram through ecocide as if every county in North Carolina doesn't have creekside greenways, as if we haven't heard from people at the Botanical Garden of North Carolina that this is a viable project to explore. And so the harm in doing this is the bad faith with our neighbors. It's the friction, it's the staff vacancies, it's all of the people who have to sit in the room and watch us do this shit over and over again for an approved plan that every other county, every other municipality finds to be totally bog standard. And so, while I do not think, it's tough to represent, I think this is a common sense slam dunk of a project, as I've said since I first ran for council. I know many people disagree for many sincerely held reasons. I want to move that forward out of integrity for holding this office. Equally so, what I said earlier holds, that I don't want to chase in a tough budgetary environment moving this project forward. And so what I think we are looking at here, and what I would like to propose as a budgetary commitment, because I think these points are really well made, Eleazar and Cristobal, that we continue to do this and we continue to find ourselves here and it continues to cause these, I hear you. I think your points are really well taken. And some urgency without money, I hear it. This project is on rocky shoals right now because of a really tough funding environment. And the total number for construction is probably going to exceed our grasp on any kind of timeline we are talking about, if we're being realistic. Is there a number, Madam Manager, that is, this one project is relatively laborious as far as staff time. I think to unstick it, we would need possible phasing strategies, a comprehensive review of total possible funding sources, including extra governmental. I think, is there 120,000, 30,000, 15,000, whether it's consultant time, whether it is a commitment to freeing up staff time, to unsticking this? Because this is really poor process that continues to happen, and I do believe that a commitment could help that.
Yes, staff is committed to the project. The timing was tricky, and I know the concerns has been because it's been so long. The PZI has something budgeted for some initial design. Tina, can you clarify what we have for at least 3/4 of the project, which wouldn't start till January? So if there's some grace, I think that would be helpful in starting it. And like I said, I think by December, we'll also have some sense of the lay of the land in terms of the environment. And if indeed, dipping further into the fund balance might be an option, or if there's some other stability around our resources, I think we'll feel better about that. But I think it's not going to lay dormant. I think we can move forward in some aspect of the project in January, and then by next budget year, think through how we can fund it, at least the design phase. So Tina, can you give some insight on, I think we have something budgeted or no?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, move close to the microphone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tina.
Good evening, everyone. 2 points, if it's helpful. The 1.2, which I think started out a 1.4, was the estimate that we had prepared as part of the regional flexible. Good memory for that we did submit. And we had used the DOT bike ped estimator tool that they provide for that. So it is an estimate. It is not a full professionally prepared estimate where you itemize amounts. So that amount is subject to change. Knowing that there was this interest in moving forward and there was a question about available funding this year, staff has been working with the town engineer, and we have included in our staff budget a relatively small amount to do what we would refer to as a crossing feasibility analysis. This is a large section. It will require pedestrian bridges, and so this is to determine where those bridges are best suited in terms of the flood study. As you may remember with the Morgan Creek Greenway, that step created a huge delay and we had to change the design of the project. So we thought, well, that's a good first step. It will also help inform, I know you've determined the alignment, but it will help provide additional information, and hopefully that would also be a stepping stone toward getting a more accurate estimate that will help us move forward. So that was an initial step, which is a relatively low cost first step.
Thank you, Tina.
Before we move to the next item, if there's not anything else, colleagues, I don't want to have to do that again. I realize that there's a lot of passion. Sometimes there is anger. I mean, I understand. But I need for us to be respectful of each other at this dais. And I mean, that's what I wanted to say before we move to the next item. I get it. I do, but at the dais, and as town leaders, I think that is not what we want to come forward to community members. Anything else on this item? I think Town Manager Tony has all the information that she needs and will get us what we need. We appreciate it. Great job on the budget, you and Chad and Mr. Keys in the back, and Leanne, who has left, and I had forgotten her name. And thank you so much. Town Manager Tony, next item.
The last item is Mr. Clerk, who's going to review selected board and commissioners' appointments.
All right, let's wake up, y'all.
We're up. We're on this last thing.
Let's wake up. Let's get
We're
it.
up.
Let's get it started. No, seriously, a little bit of levity to the meeting. We have some board appointments. We came up with the last meeting, the process. I think we've clarified how we want to do it. Climate and Environmental Advisory Commission wanted to complete their roster with one exception of a youth seat. And so there is a sheet in front of you that has some list of names. So if the Madam Mayor would kindly kick us off on how she wants to handle these appointments.
Yes, so there's two things right off the top. This is for Climate and Environmental Advisory Commission. There are 2 appointments available. And the first thing that I would ask, if there is a motion for Gretchen and I think it's supposed to be Elizabeth, or if council members want to discuss more fully.
Madam Mayor, I move that we appoint the 2 recommended people to the positions.
Second.
All right. It's been moved and properly seconded that we appoint for Gretchen and Elizabeth. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. The next one is the Orange County Food Security Program Advisory Council. I don't know if anyone is interested. I do believe that it meets twice a year. Is that what it is? Was it twice a year?
It was, the standard meeting schedule would be twice a year. Obviously, there may be a need for special meetings, but scheduled meetings would be approximately twice a year.
And so we're thinking that they want elected official or some type of subject matter expert. This request is by the Orange County Cooperative Extension, looking to better support local hunger relief efforts. I have the email that I received from them. So I did want to bring this up to see if any council members were interested. The first meeting will be in June.
Madam Mayor, I'll throw my hat in the ring. This is an area of interest to me. However, one of the reasons I'm bringing this up is because, and we didn't discuss this in advance, so maybe hopefully I'm not going to surprise him, but I was wondering if Councilmember Merrill would be willing to swap in as the alternate at Triangle West so that I could pick this one up.
A little bargaining negotiation.
A little horse trading at the table here.
Probably. I guess as an alternate, I wouldn't be
It's
on
the
hook
alternate
yet.
position, yeah.
Sure. I'm good with that.
Move to appoint Councilmember Frey. Do we need to do that?
Is it possible that we could do both of those things at once?
Move to appoint Councilmember Frey and designate Merrill as the alternate to Triangle
I
West.
amend my motion to appoint Councilmember Frey and adjust Councilmember Merrill's as the alternative for the board.
For Triangle West.
For Triangle West.
Okay. All right. So any further discussion, council members? All right, so it's been moved and properly seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Councilmember Frey will be our representative to the Orange County Food Security Program Advisory Council, and Councilmember Merrill will be the alternate to the Triangle West MPO. Is it still the MPO?
It's the
Triangle
MPO.
West MPO.
TPO now.
TPO.
Oh, sorry, TPO.
Okay, now with the acronyms.
I
All right.
changed them all up.
All right. I believe that's the last item on the agenda. Town manager, correct? Anything else, council members, before we, whoever want to jump in
Motion's adjourned.
first? Thank you, Councilmember Posada. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, it's been moved and properly seconded that we adjourn this meeting. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. We are adjourned. Thank you so much, colleagues.